Call to order instead of adjourn. Yeah.
I'm not ready. Letting
You see her dropping her equipment on the floor? No.
What's that?
Good morning. The Finance Committee is called to order at 9:32 on April 20th. At this time, I'll accept a motion to approve to modify the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include an open discussion on previous presentations.
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Don't have minutes, it looks like. So, what's that?
They're at the bottom.
Oh,
At the
minutes
bottom.
are at the bottom. Oh, okay. At this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the April 19th Finance Committee meeting.
Motion to approve regular meeting minutes from 4/19/23.
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All righty. Okay, so at this time, we are going to get to the general discussion, and the first we have is the MIT budget hearing, and so I think you were told we're using our segments to include questions asked, and so you can start.
Good morning. How's everybody?
Great, how are you?
Good.
All things considered, I'm okay. So I'm going to go as quickly as possible, and if I end up going too quickly, slow me down.
Yeah, we had one yesterday that was like 72 RPM, so.
So I want to give you guys just a little bit of history of our department. The very first IT employee was a fellow named Paul Thorne, who you might know. He founded the department in 1984 and was with us up until, it seems like very recently, but he's been gone for, I guess, 7 years now. Our department got its name because in the very early days, only a few members of finance and some higher end decision makers in the cities were the only ones that actually had information technology. So the name Management Information Technology came from that. Up until about 7 years ago, we were a division of the finance department. We now report directly to the city manager. We've had a very static staff. Since 2010, we've had 10 staff members, including the manager. And as you guys, I'm sure, are well aware, our responsibilities across the department from each and every one of those 10 staff members has grown significantly in that time. We're doing, each one of those staff members is doing more and more all the time. Since COVID lockdowns and all that fun, IT department's been working diligently to move Annapolis into becoming more technologically advanced and more agile, able to respond to things of that nature. We love technology, and we love shaping it to benefit both city staff and our constituents. So as we get back to some semblance of normality, we've revamped our mission, and we are going to be changing our name. Gone are the days where only management has huge clunky PCs on their desks. People are working from home, people are working from the field, and almost every single city employee utilizes some piece of technology to complete their jobs. So we respectfully present to you the Integrated Technology Services FY 2024 budget.
Miss, may I ask a question? You're recommending to us that we change the name. Is
So
that where we are going?
Mr. City Manager.
So this is a recommendation.
No, it's not within the budget anywhere or the code that names the department, so we recommended that they introduce it to you as their new name.
Okay.
Oh, and any changes we need in the code we'll bring before you.
Thank you. That's just
Yeah,
what I wanted
obviously
to
there's
clarify.
there's
hearing it from this
legislative action that would need to be taken down the road to formalize it. But we just wanted, I asked Mr. City Manager if it would be okay to introduce this today.
And I think we could very well, as part of our recommendation, say that we support the recommendation of the department to change the name.
That would be wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, so we're going to hop right in with the department's mission. We're dedicated to providing high-quality, technology-based services in the most cost-effective manner while maintaining a high level of customer service to city staff. As you guys are, I'm sure, well aware, municipalities are increasingly a target of cyber crimes, including ransomware, actions by nation states for information gathering, things of that nature. These threats are always changing, and our department requires funding for ongoing training, contractual services, updated hardware to continue to protect city assets and our end users. We look forward to not only continuing to bring you the level of service you've come to expect, but continuing to roll out new products and improvements in the coming fiscal year and beyond. This is a little graphic showing kind of how our department is broken out. We've got our two amazing systems analysts that are responsible for pushing forward new products, developing products, working with vendors and the individual departments to deliver the changes needed to improve efficiency. Our operations and support staff are the day-to-day nuts and bolts folks doing break fix and introducing new technology from a network infrastructure perspective, which would be, fiber optics, network switching, servers, things of that nature. Our web services team, we have an amazing webmaster that works very closely with the public and the PIO on all things website related and social media related. And she's got a great intern that has been with us for a couple of years now, and he does marvelous work as well. Our GIS department, our GIS coordinator interfaces with you guys, the council, very frequently, provides information that backs up pending legislation and things of that matter. And she has a technician that reports directly to her that does a lot of the nuts and bolts work there as well.
Hey, Brian?
Yes, ma'am.
Do the circles, the area of the circles mean?
No, clearly, because mine's in the biggest circle, and we know that shouldn't be.
I didn't know if it meant the importance of the effort or anything.
No, I don't. This is just kind of a quick little graphic. No, if the circles were appropriately sized, mine would be really little, and everybody else's would be huge. And then you got the little 10 up there because there's 10 of us.
Alderwoman Finlayson has a question.
Yes,
Mr. Packard, we don't have this presentation.
it's in the Google Drive.
We just don't have the circles.
We
Yeah,
don't,
The circles is.
we didn't have his history, anything that he's presented. So can we just pause for a moment?
Certainly.
And make sure, because you're giving us good stuff we want to hear.
Thank you, Sheila. I
But
thought I
it's
was.
not here.
I'm going,
I know
I'm going like
everybody's
this.
thinking,
Would you like me to come up there and help you out?
that's exactly why.
We have an
of
IT
all
problem.
presentations to not be.
So yeah, I was actually updating this as recently as last night. So it's important to look in the actual Google Drive for the most updated version.
The Google Drive.
Mm-hmm.
So we're used to being spoon-fed and it's on our agenda.
Oh, I do. I didn't think
What
of
now?
that it's
What?
actually
We're
attached to the agenda.
Okay,
I
okay.
apologize.
I can do that.
It was, because then you'll see the new name. Hit MIT, no, hit,
Oh, okay.
yeah, hit that one. And then you see the new name right here.
Oh.
So you know that's the new one,
Okay. We want that graph.
I think, because, yeah, you can see the bubbles.
I was only half joking when I said I could come up there and help.
I think we figured it out, believe it
All
or
right, very
not.
good.
Yeah, we like
Excellent.
pictures. You get
Because we got
points.
the bubbles, so we're good.
Bubbles
Good
are
deal.
good. Okay, we're silly, sorry.
There we go.
It's not a problem at all.
It's the fourth day.
Ready to go? Okay.
Yeah, we'll behave.
So some operations from the various divisions within our department. From an operations standpoint, one of our big goals is to continue to reduce the carbon footprint and electricity draw and all that of our data center. So we're continuing to virtualize servers, which just kind of give you a reminder what that really means. In the old days, you would have a physical server for very nearly every application that you stood up. New application meant new physical server. Those servers are being virtualized into larger, more powerful servers, so that you don't have all that power and cooling requirements in the data center. So that's an effort that's continuing as we speak. We've replaced our desktop and patch management software with a product that, quite frankly, we're continually blown away by. It's fantastic. It's very easy to use. And it has allowed us to stay much more on top of network security, patches and things of that manner. One of our goals for this year was to complete joining the city desktop PCs to our Microsoft domain. That is very nearly complete, and we're hoping that it's all the way complete by July 1st. The core firewalls for both of our points of egress of the network have been replaced. You guys are already familiar with the new card access system. That's going to be buttoned up and completed in the next few months. We've done a ton of fiber optic work around the city to serve locations where cameras have been less than reliable. So that work is getting there, ongoing, but we've made great progress in this year so far. All of our big corporate copiers across the city have been replaced. They were getting a little long in the tooth. And along with that, we've implemented new print management software, which is both more secure. You have to badge in to retrieve your job. And we've really cut down on unnecessary printing. You know, when you would move around the city, you would find piles of orphaned print jobs just laying on the printer. The fact that you have to badge in to get those jobs now saves paper, saves toner. So if somebody does print and forget about it, it has never come out of the copier, which is great and is already proven to save money and supplies. From the GIS perspective, we're very, very proud that of our GIS staff. They have gone live with the open data portal for GIS data. So our publicly available GIS layers are available on the web, and that's going to be also a work in progress where we're going to be continuing to add content to that moving forward. Our GIS folks also had a huge role in the helping plan and execute the governor's inauguration. That took a big chunk of time, and they received kudos for that as well. And then the public crime site that has just recently launched, our GIS folks assisted with the crime analyst at APD to help stand that up, and that has also gotten good reviews so far. The webmaster is a very, very busy lady. We've built more online, accessible, and mobile-friendly forms, very nearly doubling that, the amount of those, and that's also ongoing work. As I mentioned a little bit ago, online marketing campaigns citywide with all departments, but especially teaming up with the mayor's office and the PIO to make sure that the information we want out there is presented in a digestible way and reaches the target audience, and she's wonderful at that. You can see that the city website gets plenty of traffic. The Google Analytics, I'm going to be the first one in the room to admit, I don't really know what that means, but it was explained to me that that is a really good thing. I don't tend to get into the weeds with that, but that is an accomplishment that took several months, and our webmaster is solely responsible for that, as you can tell. And we've got a list of ongoing departmental website projects, as you can see there. I don't know that we need to go through all of them, but like I said, she's a very, very busy lady. Probably our most high visibility project in this fiscal year has obviously been replacing Trackit with our new EnerGov product, which has now been rebranded to EP&L, which is licensing, permitting, and I'm drawing a blank on the E, I apologize. But from the public, we've gotten fantastic reviews. The fact that folks do not have to physically come downtown, especially considering the current parking situation, that they can begin and end the permit and licensing process completely online and remotely, and pay for those permits and licenses has been a big success. We're continuing to work with the various city departments that are involved in that to help shape the product and build the workflows out so that they make sense from both the technological aspect and a practical aspect for the department. So that work is ongoing. The telestaff project. There are some city departments that spend an inordinate amount of time of actual hours during the course of a pay period just processing payroll. And a big goal of ours is to make that more efficient. We have settled on telestaff as the vendor. We've been working very closely, especially with police and fire, to get that out there to hopefully help them streamline those processes and reduce the number of hours that go into that. We expect both of those departments to be live before the conclusion of the fiscal year. Our analysts are also working with HR to roll out a vastly improved applicant tracking and HRIS product. That development is underway and making great progress, and we expect that to also go live before the conclusion of the fiscal year. We're always continuing to develop the financial system, the Munis financial system. We've begun emailing utility bills now, which was, believe it or not, a fairly large hurdle. We are accepting electronic vendor payments instead of hard checks for the first time. Speaking of streamlining processes, we are now able to print the door hangers for public works utilities, where that was actually, guys had to sit down and hand write all of those hangers. So that's a big time saver for our public works folks. Diving into the goals. These are going to sound really familiar from previous years. We're always looking to increase productivities within city agencies by taking away paper and manual processes, much to the chagrin of some, but trying to automate those, build workflows, streamline processes, and make things more efficient. We are also always looking to improve public access to the GIS data. Our GIS folks work really hard to produce fantastic data, and we want to make sure that it's easy to find and available to our constituents and anybody else that needs access to it. Continuing to improve the efficiency and reliability of the data center, as discussed before, with virtualization and more modern hardware to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce our electrical and cooling needs. The fourth bullet there, we're continuing to work on accessibility, not only with just the website, but with forms and basically all the content that we put out there for public consumption to make sure that that's ADA compliant and accessible to all of our citizens. And the big one, continuing to train, develop, and push technology forward to keep our IT environment safe from breaches, ransomware, and all those other threats that exist in the landscape today. So our first goal deals with reducing manual processes. Our analysis team meets with departments, assesses their needs, and prioritizes our limited resources, our limited hours, to prioritize software rollouts. And then obviously to complete those implementations, help train and eliminate those manual processes. These decisions are made using agency input, departmental input, and then we marry that up with what the vendor is able to provide and what our resources internally in IT allow us to provide. So what we want to do is do that for at least 3 city departments or offices, and our benchmark will be 4 software solutions rolled out and gone live with as identified by city departments and our analysis staff. Our performance measures will be the number of departments deploying those modules and the number of modules that we go live with. Improving public access to GIS data, continuing to develop GIS applications that provide that data. Those include story maps, they include new layers, and they also involve the work with the webmaster and the public information officers from both the city and the police department and the fire department to drive traffic to that information and to those layers. Our benchmarks will be the number of publicly available applications such as story maps and those layers that are available, and the percentage of increase of website hits to that data. So those measures will be quantifiable by the number of public-facing applications that are released and the number of website hits that we receive. As we continue to improve the efficiency and reliability of the data center, we want to continue to leverage virtualization to increase our efficiency. We'd like to get at least 8 servers virtualized this year. And as we'll see in an upcoming slide with capital outlay changes, we have to replace the physical servers that run our Munis and EnterGov systems, and we're going to do that, and we're going to take 4 physical servers and turn them into 1 physical server. So 4 of those are actually planned for and on the immediate horizon. We'd like to get at least 4 more done. We'd really like to get even more than that, but that's a good baseline for us. So obviously the performance measure will be how many of those servers that we do virtualize. Develop a plan to make city technology available to all citizens. So we have a plan. We want to make sure that everything that's being put on the site moving forward is ADA compliant, which is a challenge because we need to train each department has at least 1 content provider that submits content for the website. Obviously, one webmaster can't generate all the content that goes into the website because it's a lot. So we rely on these content providers from the departments to submit that data, and they are free to actually post it. We need to train those content providers on how to generate ADA compliant, specifically for the visually impaired, so that screen readers and things of that nature, make sure they're tagged properly so that visually impaired visitors can get the data that they're after. So that's really the big challenge moving forward, to get a training program implemented and make sure that that content that's being provided is compliant. We continue to go back through our catalog and remediate content. So one of our benchmarks will be 5,000 pages and documents fixed and made compliant. This is a very time-consuming, and if we farm it out, very expensive process. But we're using the tools we have in front of us to remediate the best we can. And again, the benchmark would be getting to a point where 100% of the content that we are posting online is ADA compliant. And then the performance measures would just be quantifying that. Every IT department across the country, across the world, their primary concern these days is keeping your computing environment safe from the bad guys. So our objectives are to continue to train and educate, stay on top of the changing IT security landscape. The bad guys are always coming up with new ways to wiggle their way in. And we need to continue to educate our team and make sure that we're staying on top of that. We've made big strides in improving our password and group policy enforcement, but that's a ever ongoing process. And then that shiny new desktop and patch management software is allowing us to fully automate our patch deployment so that those patches at one point in time in the past went out in a period that we weren't entirely comfortable with. And we've tightened that window for patch deployment. So that new tool has been of tremendous help to us. So we would like to complete at least 75 hours of training and education amongst our staff in the upcoming fiscal year. We're going to continue to join PCs and servers to the domain. We're moving on to our mobile devices becoming domain joined in the coming fiscal year. And then we want to make sure every single one of our desktops that are deployed and the laptops are enrolled in the new patch management software and receiving those updates on a regular basis. And again, the measures themselves are the quantifiable numbers that we're trying to get to with these goals. Our long-term goals are relatively unchanged from the previous recent years. Continuing to, another weak point in a lot of networks, especially on a municipal level, on a smaller organization schedule, is allowing older hardware to stay in the field. And those pieces of hardware may not get updates as frequently as newer stuff. So we are continuing to push to not let any of our equipment reach 5 years of age, which is kind of an industry standard. And we're making great progress on that. Obviously, we don't have the manpower or cash resources to kind of leap all the way into that and replace, hundreds of PCs at a time. So it's a year-over-year process to get ourselves in that rotation where we're rotating them out in a fiscally and manpower, a realistic time period. So one of the things that we'd also like to do is continue to bring together the various city departments via an enterprise asset management program where we want to be down the road is that all city departments are looking at a single dashboard, a single pane of glass, single workflows, so that there isn't this disconnect between departments for workflows, be it work orders or permitting and licensing that we're making great progress on. So that's a long-term goal. And we've also made great progress on integrating city and county GIS into a shared environment via the release of our open data portal, but that is also an ongoing work in progress. Again, accessibility and continuing to take manual, paper-driven services that are not available online and continue to modernize those government services and push them into cyberspace. I'm sure this is everybody's favorite part of their presentation before us. So things that we did well, we went from single-digit percentage of desktop PCs in the city being domain joined and therefore monitored by our intrusion detection services and other benefits to being domain joined, and we are very nearly there. We're 95% of the way to getting those all domain joined and hopefully will be at 100% or very near by July 1. I'm very sorry, excuse me. Our open data portal has gone live. We're extremely proud of that. And there's just a ton of information publicly available now that used to have to be, requested and also taking up staff time. So we're very, very proud of that. And which were least successfully completed. I guess in a perfect world, we would have liked to have virtualized more of our physical servers and continued to reduce that that load in our data center. We made good progress. We'd like to accelerate that process a little better in the upcoming fiscal year. This kind of speaks for itself. This is lifted directly from the proposed budget book with regards to where we started 23, where we're ending 23, and where we would like to go in 24. I don't know if you guys would like me to spend any more time on that than just kind of cruising by it. Okay.
I think the next page is, well, that's the capital expenses. I don't know, colleagues, do you want the numbers explained?
Well, I would, but I was gonna.
I can go through this really quickly if you'd like.
Well, there's a $500,000 increase, so can you explain from the projected, from the adjusted to the proposed?
Yes. So 60,000 of that is in our capital outlay because of the need to refresh the Munis server hardware. That's going to be extremely pricey. You can see the other increases listed here. I think we talked a little bit last year about how for years in this city, the police department IT environment kind of operated in its own orbit. And one of my priorities when I took this job was to bring everybody into the fold and level the playing field a little bit and make sure that we're all kind of following the same rules, same procurement processes, and same standards on both sides of the house. There's $20,000 in the capital outlay for continuing to do the hardware refresh at police, the $60,000 for the Munis servers. The paper cut print management software that we talked about earlier, I truly believe over time that that's going to very nearly pay for itself. Our emergency operations center PCs are coming up on that 5-year threshold as far as age. So that's going to be a big job. We're looking to do it cost effectively, as you can see, replacing 34 or 35 stations for less than $1,000 a station. So we're looking to do that in a cost-effective way. Our wireless access points across the city we're a couple generations behind on those. We'd like to mass upgrade those and make sure that they also are able to be patched and that they are under continued support. We've teamed up with the Annapolis Fire Department. They've been lugging around ancient iPads, so we're going to go into the same kind of rotational replacement schedule with the fire department for police and emergency services iPad replacement. So we pop that in there just to be budgeted so that we know which iPads are getting cycled out every year. The check scanners, as we move to an updated payment processing system, those are also very old and will no longer work with our new system. So that's that 3,000. And then as part of our virtualization efforts, we will need to acquire, so VMware is the platform we use to virtualize our servers. And we will need to continue to acquire both static licenses for those and pay the ongoing maintenance for those, which you'll see here in a second in our contract services changes.
Mr. Pack, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but my question had to do with the 500,000 increase total. I see that your increase in your capital outlay.
I'm sorry, it wasn't on. The increase in the capital outlay is 50,000. You have a $100,000 increase in contractual services, and the other is in salaries and benefits. Could you speak a little bit about the contractual services increase? And I think the next 2 or 3 slides speak to your capital outlay increases.
So the next slide has our contractual services differences. We have baked in 5% increases to a lot of these contracts, and especially with the Tyler Technologies contract, 5% is a lot because that is a big bill. So much of what we do in the city from a software perspective goes through Tyler Tech. So that annual bill is quite large. So a 5% increase, as you can see on the third bullet there, constitutes a rather robust chunk of money. Another thing that is kind of pricey that we have recently had to bake into our budget that was being taken care of from both CARES money and ARPA money is the virtual desktops, which is the means by which we provide a secure method for telework for staff. So that's new in the budget this year. The other, so NeoGov is what we had talked about earlier with the new HRIS software and the applicant tracking software. Kronos is the time and attendance and scheduling software that we're going live with, not only for AFD, but also APD, and also plan to expand into other city departments down the road. And this year, it was time for our 3-year renewal with one of our antivirus, anti-malware partners. So that's $23,000 that wasn't in the budget last year because that renewal just came up this year.
It's in my hand.
I'm very sorry. Go ahead.
I'll wait for the rest of my questions until you finish.
But you, Ms. Finlayson, you'll see where the rest of that $500,000 comes from as we get a couple more
I'm
slides
good
deep.
Okay, I just wanted to try to reconcile your presentation with what I'm looking at in the book.
Okay.
Like for a real simple one, for capital outlay, you list these, if you look at the slide for capital outlay.
Yep, we can go back.
Okay, so those are changes. And so why aren't they reflected in?
So these are changes to how what we're proposing for cap outlay is structured. Not every one of those line items is a year-over-year increase to these aren't in addition to the 257 or whatever we did last year. These are just changes to what we're asking for and why.
So the total still is
50,000
Yeah.
or so.
the
Okay.
2.6 is still the total.
Correct. So yeah, capital outlay from FY23 projected to FY24 projected is 44,500. Contractual services, as you could see in that slide, a lot of some of those costs only come up periodically every 2 or 3 years, like the ESET licenses. But onboarding some of the new stuff that we were talking about, like NeoGov, like Kronos, those also come with support and maintenance costs that are above and beyond what we've paid in years past.
56. Oh, hang on.
Does that answer your question? Or close,
I was
close to
I
answer?
was just being, a nerd trying, adding them up and they don't match kind of thing, and it's not.
Yeah, and I apologize. I mean, the way we did cap outlay versus contract services, the way this is contract services, this is literally line by line what's, increases and decreases. We didn't really do that for cap outlay. We just wanted you to know where that 294 is being spent, and changes from prior year's requests. It wasn't like a increase decrease thing the way this is. So I apologize if that was a little confusing. But are we cool with?
Yeah, I don't want it to be misunderstood that those are all ads.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, because that math certainly wouldn't work out. So yeah, I apologize if that was a little confusing. Are we good with contract services? You want to proceed to the next slide? Okay. Very quickly, we get a lot out of going to Tyler Connect every year. It's their nationwide conference that, unfortunately, during COVID and some other illnesses that we had within our department combined, I don't think we've sent anybody to Connect since 2019. It's just through cancellations and other life circumstances between the people that would have participated. So we're asking for some minor increases in training and education to be able to facilitate the travel to Tyler Connect and other things that come up as needed. A lot of times a staff member will express an interest in a particular area of focus that's a benefit to our department, and we like having the flexibility in that training and education budget to not have to tell them no. So I'm a big believer in ongoing training and education as far as staying on top of modern threats. I mean, IT changes. I mean, even just from a consumer perspective, the stuff you guys are buying, it moves so quickly. If we don't stay on top of training and education, we'll very quickly fall behind. And then as far as our dues and memberships for the various organizations that our staff members are involved with, we have no substantial changes there. So here's the part that Ms. Finlayson was speaking to, which takes up the the largest portion of the budgetary increase year over year, and that is our enhancement request for a senior systems analyst position. And I'd just like to begin by explaining the need for this position. We have 2 full-time systems analysts, and they are exempt employees, and they work a lot of hours. They work really, really hard. Basically, every software launch, every additional module to existing software, everything new that we bring to the table, one of those 2 folks is driving that bus. And it's a lot. They're unbelievable people. They're unbelievable workers. But I feel extremely strongly that if they are truly unbelievable people, but I fear flame out. If we try to continue to advance at the pace that we're advancing, they will do what is required of them without hesitation. But if we don't bring in some cavalry to take some of that burden off of them, I truly do worry about their sanity. So this request is for a grade 15 senior systems analyst that will slot in 1 grade behind the 2 grade 16 analysts. And the intent for this position is to work very closely with primarily finance and HR to take care of a lot of the stuff that takes time away from actual project development from our 2 analysts. And that's really kind of like the rough outline of our desires for this position. I'm positive you guys have questions about the position. No?
Roman O'Neill. I think you were first.
I just had a quick question. So the title is Senior Systems Analyst, but is coming in a pay grade behind an MIT analyst?
So I'm a little reluctant to discuss. Is this okay, like what we talked about? I'm so sorry. That was really poor timing, Mike. I'm sorry.
No slip.
Jody can explain the positions. We talked about that after Brian, so.
So what was the question again about?
So why is this slotting in at a 15 when we have, and it's got a senior level title to it?
Okay.
When it's a pay grade behind the 2 existing analysts, and
Are you referring to the other proposed changes that we're
right, and
voting
I
on?
didn't want to say too much.
No, yeah, so this is an example of a department that's in need of position review and restructuring and possibly regrading some of the positions. And that request was submitted to us, but we held back, and we're going to do it with this study that's being done so that we can do them all together. This is one example of another department that's waiting to hear about these things, and we want to do it together. So we're looking at all positions across the city. I would take the opportunity to reiterate that Mr. Backman's right. We absolutely need more analyst help there. Finance has opportunities to be more efficient, to problem solve with our systems, and it's difficult to get time when they're working on a project like Intergov that absorbs the other analysts' time. We need more help there.
So you're getting it.
I'm just giving you my thoughts on the request for the new analyst. And the reason that you might have some confusion in the titles, because we're trying to study them and grade them appropriately, but it's going to be a part of the study.
Okay. So it's not a problem that we're possibly bringing on a new person with a senior title underneath 2 other previous?
I don't think the duties are going to be exactly the same. I just don't know how you pick a title for a person that's almost that's just below 1 grade, and you don't, you have an analyst, correct?
Yes,
You
we have two. We have two
There's
analysts.
analysts, and then there's senior analysts. I mean, I don't know what you call the person in the
So,
middle.
for fear of saying too much, we had put forth a proposed reorganization of our department where those two MIT analyst positions, their titles would change. With some fairly recent events, primarily the funding and launch of the class and comp survey, the proposed reorganization, as Jody just said, has been tabled for the time being, and pending the results of this study. The title of senior systems analyst vibed well with what our proposed updated job descriptions and titles for those grade 16 folks. So that name pushed forward into our enhancement request. I can understand exactly where you're coming from, Ms. O'Neill, but if you look at the actual job description and the roles and responsibilities, you will see that it slots in very neatly just behind those grade 16 analysts.
Okay.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that same subject, I think I know I have a growing concern about the reorganizations that are being done independently in departments. I don't have a problem with us updating and reorganizing, but I feel like we're left out of that loop until now, until it comes to the budget. I think that I would be more comfortable if a department came to us to say, you know, we need to update, we need to make some changes, we need to be more in line with, you know, we want to move forward, and then giving them a blessing so that we're not having to go to finance to see if it's okay or to go to somebody else to see if it's okay. But it should be generated, I think, from the policy level. Not that we would disagree, because we respect you for the professional capacity that you bring, absolutely. But I just feel like we're left out, you know, and this is a remote example, but years ago, the police department decided to change what our police cars look like. And they changed the colors and everything. Never talked to anybody on this dais.
I think I know the fellow that made that.
I think you do too. And so our branding went right out the window because
Sure.
depends on which police car showed up had what kind of look. Well, I think those kinds of discussions need to take place at the core. Okay, so I guess my concern is that you as the professional are saying what you need, and that's what we want. Finance is telling you yes or no, or wait until the comp and class study. And we're responsible for the output.
No, and I understand. And if I may interject just for a second, respectfully. Again, this is, I'm entering, believe it or not, I think my 4th year here soon in this position. And this is kind of my first rodeo at attempting something like this. And I've asked a lot of questions and sought guidance from the city manager, from the finance director, from the HR manager. And I don't want anyone to think that I was trying to operate outside of the correct channels. I just, quite frankly, was groping around trying to figure out what those channels were. We being the dweebs that we are, we crunched the numbers. We put forward a proposal, not trying to suppose that would be what is accepted or adopted or what have you, but just trying to reflect the fiscal impact of where we wanted to be, knowing that might not necessarily be where we wound up, if that makes sense.
It does. You know me. And if this is what you need, I'm there 200%.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that.
It's the process, I guess, that I'm questioning.
And I think that's why we ended up where we've ended up, is just hang tight, let the process sort itself out, and let's see where we land, and then we can pick it up from there.
So the question is this in the mayor's budget or is it not? This is an enhancement that is
No,
not
we-
in the mayor's budget.
Well, this enhancement here, the additional position, is in fact in the proposed mayor's budget. The reorganization is not.
Reorganization is, go ahead.
But this position, this senior analyst position is in the mayor's budget. I got that, but I'm talking money now. I'm not talking staff. I'm talking if the money is in the budget, and it is. Okay, so we're good with that. I do have some other questions, though, of course.
but-
Mr. Malinoff, did you want to respond to that? Or something I said, or everything that I said, or whatever?
Some of what you said. The philosophy that we had through the budget process was rather than pick and choose reclassifications and reorganizations, that we would take a step back because of the cost and compensation study that you all paid for, endorsed, and then bring it back to you. We just didn't feel comfortable that we could pick one group out versus another and do it individually. And that's solely, we're squarely behind what they're doing, and the needs certainly became apparent during the pandemic. I mean, everything they do is critical anyway, but during the pandemic, we couldn't have operated. So we're behind them. We just didn't think as professionals that it would be prudent to pick and choose this class or that position when we thought we would have the services of this this independent study to bring up later.
So, but, not a but. The mayor's budget includes this. So
That position.
this position, and is your acceptance of the, what is it, grade 15 that Mr. Paquin described?
Yes, we put it in there as that because it made sense in the context. And we proposed other positions in other departments. It's not exclusively not including positions. It's just that a reorganization of this scope, we thought, well, this is a good opportunity to have it looked at holistically, and whatever reclassifications that followed would make sense.
So I would think that our past comp and class studies would have included where the placement should be. And I don't want to belabor this anymore. It's in the budget. That's the important thing.
Yes.
And if I may, real quick, for anyone viewing this now or later, and for everyone else's information, that's the total fiscal impact of the position. So that's the salary and benefit. That's not a salary number. That is a
Right.
salary and benefit figure.
Okay, thank you. I kind of assumed that, but great. Copiers, printers, and new cards. Those are my questions, and I don't remember what the connection is. We have the new cards, but we don't have access to the facilities that we had access to before. So I assume they're still in the works.
Yeah, so there are locations around the city, without identifying them publicly and directly, that are not complete yet. And that some folks are still carrying 2 badges because they need access to places that have been done and have not been done. So that's why we're there.
Okay, firewalls, and ransomware. And maybe they're not partners, but what's our level of security, ransomware, or hacks?
You do this to me every year.
I remember.
Because we read about it all the time in the news. Other municipalities get hacked and are really ransomed.
That happens.
So tell me we're good.
No. No, we endeavor to take every preventative measure available to us to attempt to ensure that that does not happen. A talented and motivated hacker, or even more specifically, nation-state actor, if they want in, they are getting in. Given enough resources and time, if they want what you have bad enough, they're getting in. I will not sit in a public forum and come across as boastful or anything like that and invite that sort of behavior. And that's why I say so little with regards to network security. And every year when you ask me this question, I give this similar vague response, because you don't want to be a target, and you don't want to come across as arrogant or cocky or anything like that. You want to be humble, and you want to work hard to try to prevent these things.
I understand. The ADA compliance, does that just relate to hearing impaired, visually impaired?
Primarily visually impaired.
Suppose one is technologically disadvantaged, like we are often.
I don't believe that's classified by the Americans with Disabilities Act.
So that is not part of any compliance.
Well, no, it's not part of compliance, but what it is part of is our ongoing effort to improve the usability of the website. Last year or the year before, we stopped and talked for a while about the efforts of our web team and our content providers to change the formatting of the website so that it is more mobile friendly. It's fully adaptive. It doesn't matter if you look on it on a 4.3-inch cell phone screen or a 49-inch ultra-wide monitor. It's the usability does not depend on the device that you're using to access the information, and I think that speaks to that. We did a big website revamp a couple of years ago, and the results and the reception of those results was overwhelmingly positive. We feel like information is very easy to find on the website, that regardless of the device that you're using, it is a highly usable website, and we're very proud of it.
Thank you. Very quickly, training budget. I remember years ago when we took out all the admin folks in all the departments during strict budget times. You were with us back in the 08 and 09. And we took out all training budgets also. So I'm very pleased to see that you're putting that back in. And we're going to do legislation, I hope that will be introduced on Monday, that will require a staffing impact statement for any new legislation, because we keep putting more and more on already full plates. So this is, you've heard me say this 100 times too. But my real last question has to do with TikTok. The state banned TikTok, there are federal agencies banning TikTok. Do we get to ban TikTok, or is that an issue for us?
We use a mobile device management system on all city mobile devices. And users are not allowed to install their own apps on city-owned devices. And no, we do not have TikTok on our phones or iPads.
Okay.
Alderman
Thank you, Mr.
O'Neill, you had a
Patrick.
follow-up?
I did, really quickly, and she has left, but I was going to ask that Katie change the staffing summary graph on page 56, because currently it has MIT analysts A16 with an additional in FY24, so making it 3. But if that particular position is not an A16, can we add that line item? Thank you.
Okay.
Didn't catch that.
Okay, a few questions. I know I might run over a little bit. You answered the question that I had from yesterday. I believe that the planning and zoning building permit number was higher than last year, et cetera, but I think it has to do with your automation that you spoke to. Would that be a correct assumption? That you said that they were able to do everything online instead of coming in and...
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position to affirm that from a factual basis.
Okay, I'll make that assumption. It's sort of in line with what Alderwoman Finlayson was asking, when the management structure and all. What's missing, I see, is where are we going? What do we want to accomplish? And that, again, I'm channeling my colleague Alderman Arnett, is the lack of a strategic plan. I saw that you are trying to get yours done. I know you said that you haven't achieved it. Have you started anything there, or?
It's
are
funny that you mentioned that. Mr. Malinoff and I were just discussing that the other day.
Yeah,
It is not included in this budget request, but it is very much on our radar as something that we would like to get done. So stay tuned, I guess.
well, it should align with ours, and, and then aligns with your goals and then your structure to accomplish those goals. It just seems like we always are missing that thread, but that's just an opinion. Annapolis.com website, is that ADA compliant, or you're still working on that specific?
You mean the city website, .gov?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is more and more compliant every day. We use a tool that actually crawls our website and presents an accessibility score for the website.
yeah.
Last time I inquired about that score from our webmaster, we were in the upper 80 percentile, which is actually ahead of many similarly sized municipalities in the progress that they have made on their websites.
Okay. Could you answer, what are the obstacles in meeting your long-term goals? What do you see as the obstacles in meeting your long-term goals? Is it
We would like to see our department continue to grow. People. You guys, this committee has been very kind to us in recent years with regards to our requests for capital and for services. Our focus moving forward would be to continue to refine the skills of the folks that we already have, as well as build up our workforce year over year. There are other similarly sized and funded IT departments or in municipalities with IT departments with very nearly double the number of staff members that we currently have. So while we understand that that's not something that you can accomplish in a fiscal year, but year over year, we as an organization would like to see our little organization continue to grow, bring in capable people, and be able to push projects forward that align with our stated goals.
in order to do that, are you happy with the enhancements? Did you?
I'm pleased. I'm very pleased with with our portion of the mayor's budget as presented. Yes, ma'am.
Here's my last question, and it's an inter-office question. I'm looking at your services to other departments, the GIS services, all of the software that I don't, know, et cetera, that you pay for. You pay for that stuff. I'm talking about the stuff. I'm not talking about the person that does the stuff. I'm talking about the software. Any kind of management services, all that stuff, and, the building permit process, what you do there. And I spoke to Ms. Connolly about this a couple of years ago, and I haven't talked to my colleagues about this. I'm adamant about adding a technology fee. And any of those processes, you need revenue. You push out and you don't get it for all that.
No, we are not a revenue generating department.
Well,
no,
yeah, and I think that that's what's missing. And I've done some research, and some cities do that, and I don't know how. I'd look at the experts here to. Well, first, any thoughts on that?
So I think what you're referring to is charging citizens and outside people using our services a technology fee when the government delivers them a service, correct? Or are you talking about departments that use IT?
I was thinking of both, in-house and outsourcing, or capturing that in for example, the permitting fee. Capturing it in fees that we already charge, I hate that word.
So I'm hoping that's already in that, because in an indirect way, they're supposed to calculate the fees based on what it costs to deliver the permit. So that's the kind of things that should be built in. We have to be careful from a legal standpoint if we're charging something and we're adding a fee onto it, we have legal questions as to whether or not that's legally allowed. What is a technology fee? What's it paying for? You have to have that support to show this is what it cost us.
So,
In a way, the other departments and enterprise funds, all those funds are already reimbursing the general fund for his services through those admin charges that we charge to the enterprise funds. So we're already getting into the general fund a reimbursement for that cost through that process. So on the outside, I just think those are the kind of charges that should be worked into the fee structure as a part of the fee structure, not as a standalone fee.
okay. So, let's.
So we can.
We can, and we need to reevaluate.
One of my initiatives for this fall to try to come up, make sure we're collecting all the revenue we should, is to look at all the fees in the departments and make sure, how are you calculating these? Are they reflecting current cost and deciding if we need to change the fees?
And the department head is obviously involved, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know that.
And we can include in that, what does it cost us to deliver a technology product to the outside?
Brian, do you have an idea of that cost? I mean, what's,
Very difficult to,
Yeah,
estimate.
Mr. Malinoff?
It is not unusual, Michael Malinoff, city manager, Madam Chair, it's not unusual in communities to find a technology fee on, say, a permitting system. When we had looked at doing this, the first iteration, we visited the city of Alexandria at the time, and they had it. And there are other models around the country because it is a specific user fee. Now, arguably, our fee collection for building permits and so on perhaps should have that built in, but I don't think we are that granular right now. And so for the new EnerGov, that is something that you see. Now, I will not argue out of both sides of my mouth because I support that function because it should be a user fee based on who's using it, not the public in general, which is the way it is now. But the builder industry isn't always warm and fuzzy about it. But if they see something that they can get a better service from, and you build that up from the beginning, it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty identifiable fee in, for example, construction. You know, there's an IT fee, et cetera, that sort of thing. Okay, that's all I have.
Can we ask one question?
Oh, I asked it in an indirect way. Did he have all of his enhancements
Oh, okay, I'm sorry,
addressed?
I didn't hear
Yeah,
that.
he's good.
Perfect.
He's good.
You know, that's always my question.
Yeah.
We're good,
So,
thank you.
Brian, back by popular demand are the footballs, but,
Alderwoman Tierney,
has
Madam
oh,
Chair.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles, go ahead. We were running over, so I didn't.
I don't want to go over time, so I can wait to make my statements or comments or questions for Monday night at the council meeting.
Oh, okay, at the council meeting? Oh, okay. Because you're the first, you get to choose.
Oh, I gotta go with one.
You know, I got this just for you, so, and I'm,
Are you gonna hit your target this year?
no, karma is.
Not even close. Sorry.
Sorry, back
Are we
by,
breaking for-
back by popular demand. We're adjourning, I mean, we're recessing, yeah.
Thank you.
5 minutes? Yes. 50. stop technology.
I would just introduce yourself again because you guys are my.
Oh, so all the staff stuff was not,
You're live now.
Okay. You're live
Oh.
now.
all right, well,
We'll give you more time.
how far back do you want me to go?
Just real quick, hi, everybody, say.
Yes, all right, so
Introduce
this
them
is
real
what I'll do
quickly.
this time. I'm Jody Dickinson, I'm the finance director. I'll introduce Katie Conley, my budget manager, and Capri, you've seen them every day, and then I'll just have the staff stand, wave or stand up back there. This is some of my senior staff that helps me at day-to-day do everything that we do. We could not be as successful as we are without their help. They just wouldn't be possible. So going back to the finance mission, we're there to serve. We're there to serve city departments, citizens, and stakeholders. And our mission is to create and maintain systems that ensure sound and efficient management of the city's financial activities and protect the city's financial assets. That's a very broad mission, and it covers a lot of areas, and I've listed some of the functions here. Our work with the budget, which you're very familiar with. The purchasing office, which handles all of our competitive and some of our non-competitive purchasing, issues purchase orders. We have our billings and collections division, as you know, it handles all the utility billing, the CFA billings, and the general billings, which become more and more numerous every year based on the agreements and the programs that we have on the outside. It touches the billing side frequently. We have our cash and investments, which is very complex and has many parts that we have to take care of. We maintain our banking relationships, and again, that includes several financial institutions that we work with. We have our daily operations, which is just the functioning of the office itself. Our accounts payable, we pay hundreds of invoices every week, and that's quite an endeavor, and those positions have been vacant for a while, and we've just filled them recently, so we're ramping up that operation again. Payroll, again, at least 600 transactions every 2 weeks. We have our debt management, which our debt is significant, and we have dozens of bond issues that we have to track and pay. We have the accounting side, which is also very work-intensive, lots of funds, dozens and dozens of funds, grants that we have to track separately. Our financial reporting, you see that in the form of the annual comprehensive financial report each year. That's quite an endeavor. As you see, it's a very large document that we have to prepare, and the single audit that goes along with it. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, not just the audit part of that process, but creating the financial statements and pulling the book together itself is just a huge undertaking. And then we have risk management, which is primarily worker safety, employee safety, which, as you know, involves a lot of different types of departments. And Corey is very, very good at what he does, helping us make sure that we are as safe as we can be, and he also helps with the administration and the management of the workers' comp claims and the other insurance claims. And then we also have the role of creating an internal control system to protect our financial assets, and that really is something that touches all aspects of what you see up there. There's an internal control function to everything we do. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of what we have grown into, what we've talked about before was just the foundational services we have to do in finance. And these are a lot of the extra things that have been created over time in the way of initiatives and programs that just shows you that most of the things that the city does as far as programs touches finance and creates a layer of work, tracking, control in finance. And I won't go through all of these, but some of these are more recent, and some of them have been around for a while. Some of them are initiated by state legislation, some of them are initiated locally. But there are a lot of varying aspects of these programs and how we have to track and maintain the records so that we can properly handle the programs. Next slide. So, this is gonna, yeah. So this slide goes through our 23 accomplishments. I won't go into it in detail, just quickly, 23, when I sat down to think about the 23 accomplishments, my thing is like, we survived, and that's accomplishment. We have had, thank you, so I can read it better. We have had quite a year with vacancies. Several were open a good part of the year, and when doing that, the staff has to do double duty. We've had a lot of people working overtime. We have had them trying to balance different duties. I do feel like we're close to being fully staffed. Within a couple months, I'm hoping we can be fully staffed. And we've also been using temp services pretty regularly to try to fill in some of the gaps. But I really have to say that this year has been, that's an accomplishment this year for our staff, to try to keep up with everything that we have to do on a daily basis with all the vacancies that we've had. We got our annual comprehensive financial report out a little earlier than we have in the past, and it also included the single audit, which has traditionally tracked way behind the issuance of the larger comprehensive financial report. But the auditors, that was their approach. They do the testing at the same time, and they issued the reports at the same time. And I have to recognize Julie Donnelly's work on that. That was something that I had to take a heavy role in prior to this, and she's taken that off my plate, so that's wonderful. Purchasing, they are always supporting the city's competitive solicitation process. And again, I have to give kudos to James and Valessa for keeping up with that workload during this last year when we've been trying to fill a position. We implemented another module of debt book. Last year when we came to you, we had just implemented debt book for debt tracking. And we've implemented a module where they help us track our leases, which helped Julie implement the GASB statement that we had to implement for leases, which we talked a little bit about when we talked about the annual comprehensive financial report. We're working on doing our accounts payable with ACH transactions instead of checks. We've made some strides recently to get that implemented, but it's not fully implemented yet, but we want to be able to do that once we have our 2 new staff people trained on their regular duties. We are close to be able to send out electronic invoices for utilities. That's something that we started a couple years ago, and it's got put on pause while the IT had other things that they were working on, and it was getting a form together that we can do that, and we're going to be testing that in the near future. OpenGov, this has been a continual improvement, as you can see at budget time. This year we used OpenGov to input our departmental budget requests, and instead of inputting into Munis, putting it into OpenGov, fixing it, editing it, and then putting it back into Munis. We're going to work the whole thing through OpenGov and then put it into Munis once everything is set. And then I'll give kudos to Katie and Capri on getting that further along. Every year we're trying to use more and more features of the OpenGov system. AMRP, I don't have to tell you how complicated that was. That took many, many, many hours, even in through FY23 with the September bond transaction with Medco, and then later with our refunding the sub-debt related to that deal. And it's ongoing, because as the garage comes online, we then have to work with a trust arrangement to bring our money in-house, get money in-house from the waterfall payment. So bond issuance in December, we had a significant sized bond issuance for new projects and a chunk of bonds for the city dock and to refund that subdebt. And we got to meet with the rating agencies. That's something that governments do pretty regularly, but since I've come on and during the pandemic, we didn't meet with them, but we actually met with them in person this year and visited with them and explained all the good things the city was doing, and it went very well, and we maintained our ratings. And then on the risk management side, Corey continues to improve our workers' comp results, setting up safety committees in some of the departments so they can address each department's needs individually. Okay. Purchasing, just what I did there was collect these stats so you can see the volume of what the two employees in that office have to handle. As you can see, from all the way from the formal competitive bids all the way down just to initiating purchase orders for everything that the departments do. It's very notable, and good work to those two. Next slide. Okay, and I kind of touched on this. These are some of the things that Corey listed as some of the things that he feels are his accomplishments this year. Reducing the number of workers' comp claims. We've engaged the company that helps us administer our database of claims. Cisco has a branch that helps us consult on mitigating risks. If they see situations where we can reduce our risk for workers' comp and other claims, they help us by advising us on that. No, hold on, go back. The safety committees I talked about. The 30% of workers' comp self-insurance fund payments represent final settlements, so he feels like we're and I think that the city attorney spoke to that about clearing things out more quickly and bringing things to resolution. All right, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so now I'll go through some of our goals. I will tell you that when the strategic plan is developed, my performance measures are in need of revamping. It's hard for me to decide how you measure something from a finance standpoint because it's not like we have a deliverable service per se. So something that we want to work on. Our first goal is to maintain timely and accurate accounting records and strengthen and maintain and monitor internal controls. And some of the performance measures there are making sure that we reconcile accounts on a regular basis. That is the key to making sure your financial records are accurate, is by reviewing the details within the accounts and making sure they are the proper balance. We want to make sure we get things recorded correctly so we don't have to make changes. That always saves time. And we would like to do regular assessments of the departments and go out and do risk assessments of things that need to be improved there as far as internal controls, as many of our departments are handling financial assets. Let's go through the goals quickly now. We want to provide accurate and timely financial information to city departments and improve reporting capability even within Munis, and for the departments to be able to look at their own reports as well. We've gotten better at delivering our quarterly report, which all of you see. Next one. On the third goal, we want to provide accurate and timely billings for utility, CFA, and general billings. We do have, we need to get the code in line with how we want to function there to make sure that we're billing everything we need to bill. An example of that is, we added the penalty to both water and sewer, but we need to go into the code and make sure it's added to the other portions of the utility bills as well. The refuse charge and the stormwater charge, because that's not discussed in the code at present. And one of the performance measures, of course, is customer complaints, and that's one of the items that I'm not sure how you measure that, because when somebody has a utility bill that they don't want to pay, I'm not sure how you improve that, because they have to pay it, and you just have to talk them through the situation. And So let's move on. On our next goal, we need to protect the city deposits and maximize related earnings. I do want to, one of the performance measures is regular review of our banking relationships. We need to put our banking contract out for bid, and that's something that we just haven't had the bandwidth to do, but it's time for that. I'm hoping to get that done. And closing the number of unneeded accounts, which we've been very successful with. When I came on board, we had far more accounts for old deposits and bond issuances out there, and we managed to refinance debt and close a lot of our external accounts at the Bank of New York and bring them to our PNC bank that we do most of our banking with. It's been very helpful and saves time in corresponding with the bank for transactions. Next one, we want to improve efficiency of the finance department. Again, that's always the goal. How do we decrease the amount of time it takes us to do payroll? How do we decrease the amount of time it takes us to do our accounts payable payments and not have to, and one of those goals is not having to work with paper checks, which we still do. We're trying to minimize that through the ACH process and getting our employees on direct deposit, because we still do have quite a few that are not on direct deposit. Next one. We want to efficiently manage city debt. We have been very successful at that. You want to do all your debt issuances with competitive bidding. That gets you the best interest rate and the best debt service schedule over time. You want to only issue when you need the cash and not before. And before I came here, they were issuing as the projects were put in the CIP, they would issue the debt, and the debt would sit there for too long. We paid too much debt service. So now we create a bond proceeds pool, and as the projects need cash, they all draw from the same pool, and we issue the debt as we need to for the cash spending. So that's what I call my just-in-time borrowing bond issuances. So that's what we're doing now. We've been very successful. On our Goal 7, we want to provide accurate and timely reporting of grants activity and standardized grants management. We have a new, relatively new, Suzanne's been with us a few months, but she is our grants accountant, and she's making great strides in managing, as you know, the vast number of grants that we have. Helps with the accounting of such, and when they file for reimbursements, she helps with checking out their reimbursement requests to ensure that the system, the MUNIS system, backs up what they're requesting. So that, yes?
What is the title of that position?
Grants accountant.
Okay.
We had somebody in there who resigned, and then it took us a while to fill it. Took us, was it a year? It was almost a year to fill it. And, but she's very good, she's very qualified, and she's helping us tremendously get on top of that so that we know that we are tracking that grants activity. And as you know, we have more and more grants every year.
Thanks.
Goals, you want to keep going?
Yeah.
We want to minimize the risk for city employees and city property. We talked about that. Of course, the performance measures there are lowering the number of claims and continuing to do evaluations of department locations to make sure that they're safe, and updating our manuals and safety policies through some of these safety committees. We want to maximize efficiency and increase the equity of city spending. This is the purchasing end. I tried to put all of these on one slide. It was kind of difficult to put them all under the same umbrella. We want to always maximize the use of women and minority business enterprises that we're using. One of the issues there is finding a good way to measure what organizations are out there, and when you have a big construction project, there's subcontractors, how are their subcontractors being evaluated for those issues? One of the things that we want to do is to increase efficiency. I'm going to revisit the thresholds for competitive and non-competitive spending. Over time, you got to increase those because as prices go up, you don't want to make it too cumbersome for your departments to purchase items. I want to possibly increase those thresholds and then promote the use of our P-card program more so that the departments can function independently, more independently, when they're trying to buy the smaller dollar items. Okay, so we can go to the next one. These are some of the goals for '24. Last year I brought to you a reorganization. We're going to continue to try to put that into place. I call it a reorganization. Some of it's adding staff, some of it's changing the way they function. It's not too complicated. It's just, adding staff one at a time or two at a time into the department to try to do what we need to do from a foundational basis. Office space, as you know, I've spoken a lot about this. We don't have enough space. The preliminary review from the group that's reviewing it came up with a square foot size that's more than double what we have right now to house all my staff. So that does show you that their evaluation shows we're way undersized. The space that we have is way too small for what we're doing. We want to get the ACFR out by December 31st. That's very possible this year. With Julie's experience and with our auditors, I think that's very doable. We want to get, as I spoke earlier, we want to get accounts payable on ACH. We want to be doing our utility invoices through email, but that's an optional feature. You don't have to have email, but optional where the customer wants it. And make sure the convenience fees, which we passed through code changes a while ago, we got to apply those across several systems because we have a lot of merchant account services that we use for our various departments, use different merchant accounts, and we have to find a way to get the credit card fees paid by the person that's buying the service, not us. When I came on board, we were paying all of the credit card fees ourselves. We want to, we have a new GASB we have to implement on software licenses.
Could you say what the acronym is?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you?
Government Accounting Standards Board. I'm sorry. They tell everybody in governments what they have to do to their financial statements and how they have to track their financial transactions. And this is like the lease GASB, where it looks at your software agreements that we have a lot of and decides whether or not they're long-term commitments, and then tells you how to measure those long-term commitments. So they'll be showing a little bit differently on our financial statements. We want to continue to make improvements to OpenGov. We've challenged OpenGov to make some improvements to their products, like the budget book, that we would like to see put in place, so we're hopeful that that will happen. I've got to update and develop policies and procedures. That helps always with any kind of succession planning, to have a book, an instruction book on everything we do and how we handle it, so nothing falls through the cracks. Grant administration improvements. As you know, I want to be able to bring a grant administrator on to track all operating and capital grants for their overarching federal and state requirements, to make sure the city is handling that properly. So I would very much like to get that position filled sometime in the next year and get them going on monitoring our departments. And then we want to improve enforcement and collection of the amounts due the city. This is I tell you this, I think there's some couple of revenue flows that would benefit from more enforcement. And that's just a matter of bandwidth and having somebody devoted to following up on those. This is something I showed you last year. It was just my overall perspective on what I thought was missing in the department to do the things that we have on our plate. And the grants administrator and one of the, I think I have the budget analyst position in yellow, but that was funded in 2023, and it should be blue, so I'm sorry about that. But the others, We will come to you at some point for another budget analyst. I've asked you this year to add a position, AR senior accountant, and then, but we've taken a full turnover reduction for it because I can't add that or the grants administrator until we have space. And then eventually an internal auditor inside the finance department that can go out and start reviewing the other departments' use of collection of cash and their processes and handling cash.
We'll
Next.
probably go back to that slide with our questions.
Next. This is just a summary of our budget. I'm going to have to get a slide here. Oh, good, we're near the bottom. All right, so as you see, we have an increase to our salary and benefits. That most of that is that, no, that's right. None of the new position doesn't affect that number this year because we've taken a full additional turnover cut for that. So basically, it's a status quo. Besides the position, there's nothing else new in there, right? Yeah, and just the increases to the salary package through the COLAs and steps for anybody who's eligible for a step increase. And the bonuses in there for my employees too. Each of the departments has a budget for their bonus that they're set to get this year. Next. This is a pie chart. We like visuals. This shows you what our budget is made up of, which as you can see is mostly salaries and benefits. Contractual services, that's our audit services and a lot of office services that we use, anything from shredding and consultants and temp services, our OpenGov software, our debt book software payments are in there as well. Very little for capital outlay and supplies and other, and we've been successful every year, I believe, since I've been here, we've been reducing supplies down little at a time because we're trying to use less and less paper. Brian spoke to you about the software on the copier machines that allow you to not print something that you sent to the printer, but you don't need it now. It doesn't come out automatically. You go and you ask it to print that for you if you want it. That saves us a lot of paper. All right, so now, well, what's this? Purchasing. This is purchasing's pie chart. As you can see, it's even more noticeable that salary and benefits is most of their budget. Next. This is where, this is a citywide breakdown. And one of the things you had yesterday during planning and zoning was their pie chart that showed finance together with the finance non-allocated part, and this is one where we've split it up for you to show you where we are. 3%, it includes purchasing, it's 3% of the citywide budget. Are you sure that's the general fund or citywide? It's the general fund, okay. So, yeah, we're 3% of the general fund only. The non-allocated includes all the interfund transfers and the debt service, which is why it's such a large number. Next chart. This breaks down what's in our contract services account. As you can see, it's cash transport, shredding. Level 1 does our mailing of our utility bills. ADP, we're using them for the tail end of the payroll process. Just we keep some in there for consultants and any agencies that we need to use their services. Gmail and that's okay, that's okay. That was just the SAM renewal, which is a federal registration site. And then I wanted to provide you this. It's not contractual services, it's the accounting services, which tells you what's in that account as well, so you can get an idea of why the contract services spends what it does. Host compliance, debt book, temporary accounting services. We have a consultant helping with our ADP work. The audit committee set up the fraud hotline through Lighthouse. We pay for that. And our audits there, we use Davenport, as you know, as our financial advisor. Bank fees, our actuary who does our evaluation of our self-insurance fund is paid through this, and our cost for OpenGov. And yeah, increases for next year includes a vehicle for the risk manager. Corey has been using his own vehicle. He does a lot of site work, and so he's running around a lot. And yeah, he can track and request mileage if he wants it, but you know, that's a hassle. And I think this is something that he needs for his work. It wouldn't be a take-home vehicle. It would just be parked in the garage, and then he would use it to do his work on a daily basis. This is just a table. This is in the budget book. It tells you the components that are in the finance non-allocated, so you can understand why it's so large. We don't have to go over this in detail. We've got the health insurance in our section of the budget book. This is where we pay out all the health claims during the year. And the revenues coming in are coming from the funds that have employees, and from contributions from employees go in here as well, and the money's coming in from retirees flow through here as well. And then at the end of the year, we take out all the retiree-related transactions and move them over to the OPEB fund, so we can quantify that separately. This is a summary of the self-insurance budget. We talked about that a little bit yesterday on how we set that budget in accordance with what the actuary recommends. We can move on. We also are in charge of the sprinkler fund, as you know. We had an infusion in '23 into the balance. We've got a couple of applications in process, but that's all we've added this year, so we haven't had a lot of activity on the new sprinkler provisions. And the enhancement requests that are included, like I said, adding a senior accountant position, about $150,000 total with salary and benefits. However, we've taken an additional $150 in turnover because we don't expect to fill both this one and the grants administrator in '24 because of space. We may, if we move in '24, we may be able to fill both of them, but only for a partial time of the year. So the net impact to this is zero in the '24 budget. These are some of my long-term goals. We want to get fully staffed, and we want to be co-located. I think that was on there for last year. I still strive for that. I want everybody under the same roof. It's much easier to function with purchasing and finance and risk management all together. And it also helps to be co-located with the other departments that are down here, instead of having to move from building to building. I would like to be able to complete my policies and procedures for all of our finance initiatives. And we've talked about some of these other ones. AP payments through ACH, electronic billing systems. One is the email option, but I'd really like to automate even further and remove the paper flow from a lot of this. Standardized third-party processing services. As I said, we're working with several merchant account services for our various departments, and it increases the level of work we have to do. So it would be nice to standardize them and bring them all under the same umbrella. We can work towards that. I don't think we'll ever get 100% there. And just to give you an example of what I'm referring to, like Harbor Master uses a software that uses one merchant service for their credit card transactions. We use something different when we're doing utilities and our CFA billings. When they pay with a credit card, we use another account. The Civic Rec system I think Civic Rec runs through ours. I'm trying to think of the other example. The host compliance collection of the short-term rentals, they work through another one. So we have about 6 of these that we're using throughout the city, and it'd be nice to bring them all under the same umbrella. I want to streamline payroll, I talked about that, not using paper checks, and being able to, at some point, outsource the payroll processing. We talked a little bit about this too, using P cards more frequently, and then analyzing our purchasing policies to determine if we can be more efficient with our dollar limits and allow those limits to increase. And more robust use of the OpenGov software so that we can use that product to its fullest. Is that it? I think that's, yes. All right, sorry, that was a lot. Did I stick, I didn't even stick to my 20 minutes, did I? I think it went over.
Are you ready, or should I go to Alderwoman O'Neill?
No, go ahead.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Thank you very much.
Almost 18 minutes. It looks like.
Oh, okay, not bad. I felt like I was talking forever.
I appreciate the detail, and I also appreciate the fact that you've been working short-staffed. I have a couple of questions in regard to some of the things that you all are doing. And from my constituents, I had a question about payments to vendors, in particular as it pertains to art in public places and vendors going through there. There's been many times when, knowing that they're not going to get paid the day of or prior to the day of, payments are taking anywhere from 3 to 6 months to be paid for that. And is that an issue from the middleman?
So that could be several things. We respond to those the invoices come from AIPPC. Getting the invoices, proper support, and minutes from the meetings that verify that the board approved it. That's sometimes an issue. What we had been doing, okay, so a while back it was being done by Rec and Parks. AIPPC is under Rec and Parks. It's the department that was controlling their expenses. There were problems there. Things weren't getting processed quickly. So before Brian left as purchasing officer, he started processing them when they would come in, and then the purchasing staff took that over to try to more quickly turn those over. And during that time frame, I do believe it was sped up as far as response time. Some of the issues are going back to AIPPC and saying, we need this, we need this, we need this, and having them give us what we need in order to process it for payment. Once it's in the system, it's a pretty quick transaction. Because of the 2 staff in that department for the last year, they asked if they could give it back to Rec and Parks, and we did. I asked the city manager if we could hand that back over, and so lately they have been doing it, and I don't see the transactions like I used to, so I don't know if that's an ongoing issue as well. So I believe it's probably we don't typically pay vendors before they perform a service. So we wouldn't want to be giving people checks before they perform. Then the question is, how timely do we get the information afterwards with an invoice and the minutes and all the support we need? So I can't say that we're not part of that issue, maybe some, but once we get all the pieces, we typically turn those over pretty quickly when it was being handled by purchasing.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, last year I think it was last fall, the council voted to allow you the opportunity to work with a resident who was seeking relief from a late payment or a late fee, late fee. Do you have an idea of how many residents that has affected since that went into effect?
So you passed policy that we could waive the late fee, which is very helpful because, I can't judge somebody's story as to why they're late. I mean, valid stories, probably most of them, but I had no authority. With that authority, we have regular requests now to waive the penalty, and I'll ask, I don't know, Christy, do you have an idea how many? Because LaTanya's not here, and she would be the one that's doing that waiving, but we can get that for you. How many have been waived? We put it on the record, and we only allow 1 per year. So in every 4-quarter billings, you can have a late penalty waived once.
All right.
And we don't I have in my policy, I will allow them to do it without questioning what's your reason, what happened. I don't want my staff to try to judge who's telling you something, who's spinning a story and who's got a real story. It's just, you can do it once a year.
But the process is working.
Yes, the process is working and people are using it, correct? Yeah.
All right. Another question that I continue to get from constituents is why they are sending their utility bills to an out-of-state collector.
So that's our Wells Fargo lockbox. They used to be in Maryland, up Baltimore area, right? They used to be in Baltimore, and because of their operational efficiencies, they have consolidated that with Philadelphia. So the lockbox is now located in Philadelphia, and so it's going to a lockbox that then processes each individual payment, we can upload the detail, and then the cash goes to Wells Fargo. So I don't know that it may take an extra day or so to get there, but that was a process put in place by Wells Fargo. We're using their lockbox. We definitely want a lockbox service. And they moved that, I think it was a couple years ago, they moved that.
Great. And then my last question is the sprinkler fund. You said we don't have a lot of...
We have 2 that are in process that we're trying to get back from the fire marshal. They do the review of, is the sprinkler system adequate for what they're, trying to do, and it approves the amount they're asking for. And we have 2 that are there now that aren't finalized.
And do we advertise anywhere that we have that fund?
It's the availability of the loans is on the website. It's just, what do you mean by advertising? Because I suppose we could do some kind of marketing effort to push it out, and I would need probably Mitchell's and Ena's help with something like that. Like, how do you blast out that if you want that?
Similar to what we did for ADUs, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple of constituents ask about it and say, well, I never even knew that was a possibility. I just paid everything and I did the whole thing. So
It was recently mandated for the businesses to have it within a certain time frame, but I would expect that to have more activity too, but I haven't seen a lot.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we could probably do something. I don't know how we get it out to the people that would use it, but
Yeah. Sometimes when you send people to the website, they look at you with a blank stare to say, have you been there? I know it's getting better.
I know, when you say it's on the web, everything's on the website, but how do you know?
Exactly.
It's more like a feature, like what are we featuring, and blasting out particular messages to groups that sign up with an email or something somewhere where you could blast out city emails to folks to remind them of these programs.
All right. And then my very last question goes back to slide 17, where you highlighted new positions. And were all of those new positions in this?
No. So last year, what I ran into last year, I was like, okay, I've been here long enough. I understand all these aspects of what we're doing. I kind of got the big picture. It's really hard to manage. I liken it to, you're standing in front of one of those tennis ball machines and you're trying to handle as many of them as you can. And I tried to get my arms around, here's everything we're doing. And that's where I put together that list of things that are particular, those extra projects and initiatives we had. And I said, what do I think we're missing? I've been here long enough to say, what do I think we're missing? Because we definitely need to strengthen our foundational work so that we have enough people assigned to what needs to be done to make sure that we have the strong foundation to back up things like a strategic plan and performance measures and stuff like that. Right now, it seems to be, let's get through the daily transactions and the monthly reports and the annual reports, and not like that big picture view of what's going on. What do we need to be successful? And I worked this out and put it on paper, and it had a few new positions, and I came to you last year with 2 of them, the grants administrator and 1 budget analyst. And we had 2 titles, a senior and a budget analyst, so we didn't know where we were going to fill that at, but Capria's come on as a budget analyst. It was originally my intention to ask for another budget analyst Oh, yes, and we did a couple of upgrades last year for our accounting manager and budget manager, so that they could properly reflect the complexity of the work they're doing. So those were last year's. And then we had these other positions that I hadn't yet filled. And I got the grants administrator, as I've said, I haven't filled it. The budget analyst is filled, and the managers were established. I now would like to place a senior accountant that's in charge of accounts receivable. We have a billings and collections division, but a lot of their time is just absorbed with billings and collections. There's no person that's responsible for, here's everything that's owed to us, you know, occupancy taxes, who's out there renting their facilities, are we collecting these? We have a lot of pilot arrangements from the past. We bill them every year according to the terms, or they pay us their fee, but we don't have any process in place to review, is that the right one? You know, we don't do any review of their records to see if the pilot's in the right amount. Some of the pilots are determined by the organization. So some of those, and to monitor all the general billings, like for our restaurants, our parklets, and those things that we collect for as well. It would be nice to have somebody responsible for following up on that. Another thing I know is an issue is we issue citations for a lot of things, but the collection effort has not been strong. And I know the Office of Law has tried to follow up on some of that, but I'm concerned that there's probably a lot of uncollected citations that we just don't have the person available to start calling people and saying, why haven't you paid us this? There's a number of things on our accounts receivable list that are old. I don't know if they're still valid, and somebody owes us money and we just haven't had the bandwidth to pursue them. So it would be a position devoted to collecting the amounts that are due. And I think it's an enforcement effort.
So in your budget summary, the salaries and benefits does include that?
So, yes, so if you were to look at, here's all the positions listed. It includes the senior accountant, and the grants administrator, and the budget analysts. But, and a lot of the department budgets, we take a turnover reduction, meaning we add up all the salaries, and then we reduce it by an amount of a turnover reduction. And I typically take, I don't know what my normal turnover reduction is in my budget. I added 150,000 to it. So I'm taking that much of a larger turnover reduction. So although this position is listed in our list of positions, I've reduced the fiscal impact by increasing the turnover, because just like the grants administrator, I can't fill it. It's got to be, we got to do a grade evaluation on it yet, it hasn't been graded yet, and then we have to fill it. That's going to take a while. So I just don't want to assume I have these positions, but I can't fill them right now. But if you were to look forward 2 years, I would hope that they were both filled and we were paying for the two whole positions.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the same org chart, in highlighted yellow, it says new positions, but those positions are actually not new positions. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, that's the ones we haven't. I'm asking, there's 3 of them there that are yellow. Look, if you look, I think he changed the shading on the one.
I see one is
So the
changed
blue
from yellow
have been
to blue.
filled. The yellows have not. I'm asking you this year for the AR senior accountant. I haven't put forth an internal auditor. I haven't put forth the second budget analyst yet, because we can't add everybody all at once. We're gonna come to you one at a time and say, this is what we want to do now.
Okay,
in
so
priority
by
order.
new positions, you mean positions you'd like to request? And there should be only 2 of them instead of 3?
So this year, I've asked you, in the budget, we're adding that AR senior accountant, the one that's in the middle there. I'm not asking you for a senior budget analyst. I'm not asking you for an internal auditor.
So,
But this is my vision of what we would need to be more successful.
and are those positions in the mayor's budget?
No,
No.
just the senior accountant, just the senior accountant. It's got an
Okay.
AR senior accountant up there.
Okay.
AR stands for accounts receivable.
Can I interject and ask you to ask her, because hi. Last year, you said, this is what I need for the future. But if I remember correctly, you delineated what wasn't in the budget, like, with a dotted or something. So this is very confusing, because,
So if you look at the box on the, last year, I had this same slide. The
Yeah.
positions of grants administrator and budget analyst were yellow. And I had a box over on the lower right, like I do now, and it listed my priorities. This is how I'd like to implement this, by priority order. And the dots that were there, the bullets, there were two. Last year, you would have seen two more bullets in there. The grants administrator and the budget analyst.
On Katie's.
oh, you're blue on Katie's slide, okay.
Right. So let's repeat.
No, if you're good, I'm good.
So the priorities that are not in the mayor's budget are the senior accountant, yes or no?
That is in the,
It is in the budget.
one thing I'd like to add this year.
Is it in the mayor's budget?
Yes.
Yes, okay. The senior budget analyst is not in the mayor's budget?
No.
Okay. The budget analyst, not in the mayor's budget?
It is, and
It is
there
in the
she
mayor's
is right
She's
there.
here.
Okay, I'm sorry. It is currently in, okay, and the internal auditor,
No,
not in the mayor's budget?
no.
Okay. To whom does the grants administrator answer?
I'm hoping to have that person report to the budget manager.
Okay, because on the chart, you see
I
that
don't
they're
have-
kind of hanging there.
Yeah, I know, there,
with
I
no
probably, I'm
connection
missing
to-
a line somewhere, yeah, you're
Okay,
right.
so that, it's under budget manager,
Yeah.
but it's not a connection,
Right,
so.
thank you, there's a
Okay.
line missing there.
All right, so I'm good with that now. While we're talking about staffing, I have legislation, we have legislation pending that will speak to adding a staffing impact to any piece of legislation.
Okay,
Will you be able to analyze the need for your department on future legislation? You're going to be asked, if this piece of legislation is approved, what is the impact going to be on your department?
do you mean that when, as you pass ordinances that require finance to do more work, you want me to value what time we're putting into it?
I want to know if you can implement whatever we pass with the current staffing that you have, or whether you will need additional staff to be able to do what we want.
Okay.
Okay, so you can think about that, because
Yeah.
that's what's
Yeah,
coming.
that's interesting. It's just that sometimes, like, the little bits of work that come from ordinances, I'm just trying to think in my head how we pull that together, because one thing alone might not require a person, but if you put, then, by the time you add a fifth thing to us, we're like, that's too much.
Well, and you're making an excellent point, because the work may not be attributable to a specific department, but it may be spread across several departments, and that's something we have to deal with in,
I can give you an example in that recently there's been some legislation that suggests that we would collect a fee in lieu of and put it in a separate pocket and use it for a particular purpose. Those are the things that add to that level. We got to add one more thing to track, one more thing to track. And I've had heard about 2 or 3 of those recently, like, shit, can we do this? Can we take this fee and set it aside? I'm like, it's just a small amount. I would rather not. When I came on board, we had those revolving funds, and there was maybe 20 or 30 revolving funds of these past little pockets of money that people had set aside, and they were very difficult. They weren't being tracked correctly.
okay, so that tells me that we've got to tweak this so that if it impacts several departments, then
Yeah.
how do
Well-
we consider?
Right, at least you know then how it's going to impact our departments, if you add that to the ordinance or the information that supports the ordinance.
And we've had a good example from one of the aldermen on what's the terminology for,
Stormwater?
not stormwater, it was the prevailing wage. So anyway, I think that's a good example. Okay, other questions. We were supposed to get a presentation from Davenport. Is that scheduled already, or where are we with that?
A week from today, they're coming to the work session in the afternoon.
Okay, great, thank you. OpenGov, do we now have all modules, or?
We have a lot of modules, we're using a couple. I'll let Katie speak to the different products that we're using. We have a lot of citizen-facing modules that we're not using yet. We haven't gotten their budget modules fully and acceptably implemented, and some of its improvements that they're trying to make to the software.
I remember last year, Ms. Conley telling us that we were getting more modules. So my question is, do we have the modules that we need to do the job that we're trying to do right now?
Sure. Excuse me, Katie Conley, Budget Manager. I think our thought changed a little bit in the sense of let's master what we have, and that's our goal in the short term. Our thought process this summer is to really, since I have Capri to help me now, I've got bandwidth to be able to dig into OpenGov. We really want to dig into OpenGov because there's a great transparency feature of this software that we haven't really leaned into that we can incorporate citywide. Right now, we basically use the budget and reporting module. So what Jody touched on earlier, we do all of departments submit their budgets into OpenGov. The book itself comes out of OpenGov. So there's different features that we use within that module. There's other features that they offer that either from a bandwidth perspective we don't have to implement, or they're a little too new and we need to see the issues that come with implementing new software anyway get fleshed out before we take on, right? But I think that it will be better for you is if we come back to you maybe this fall or even this time next year, and there's going to be a lot of improvements that we have the opportunity now to implement.
I think it would be very helpful, at least for me and maybe for my colleagues, to have a little mini lesson, because I thought I knew how to use OpenGov last year, and this year, not so much. So I don't know what's changed or if I've changed or whatever, but I could use a little tutorial on that.
Earlier, Brian spoke about IT and departments at other governments that are our size and what they look like staff-wise, and we've done a lot asking on the OpenGov people, if you see, for municipalities like ours that use OpenGov, what size is their budget team? Because they have such a great website where it's very interactive, and they put out all these stories and interactive tools with the public, and they have at least 4 people on their team for budget. So,
well, that's good, a new tool for us to.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that the budget, we never had a budget staff here per se. We were just using some of the finance staff to do budget work, and we're slowly building it up. But that's where, if we really think we want to get a robust product out there, we're going to need to increase the size of the budget team. But so that's just for future reference.
Well, and maybe we don't need it, meaning the council, to have access to all of the different components that OpenGov offers. So maybe. Women and minority business enterprise. I was surprised to see that in your presentation. It was mentioned only briefly yesterday in the planning and zoning budget. So why is it in?
Well, when it's in the mostly in the purchasing efforts, we try to reach out to vendors in our competitive process to make sure that we're both marketing and including women and minority-owned businesses in our pool of proposers. And it really hasn't gone very far since Brian left, but we were trying to get our arms around do we want to set a threshold, or do we just want to say we need to improve it? How, you know, we do market to those firms through the state sites for those, and we do get response from them, but we have a lot of big construction projects that are not, that, you know, that we use for big construction that have a lot of subcontractors. How do we know who they're using? How do we know they're meeting goals? That's one of those things that we could do if we had the program established and we're tracking it. I'm not even sure we have the tools in place to track what we need to track. We do try. We do have some of that information when we get RFPs and that kind of thing, but.
So we're talking about the procurement process. And we still don't have a procurement officer.
We do.
We do have a procurement officer now.
Yes.
Okay.
But not starting for a month, so.
So we don't have one yet, but
Right.
one is on.
Yes, we just, and I haven't talked about it yet because we just finished
Okay.
some of the onboarding review processes that have to be done before we can really formally extend.
Okay. I would be interested in talking to you further about setting a standard for
Yeah.
minority participation.
Yeah, and that's, as you know, purchasing is not my expertise, so the person that we're bringing on has a lot of history in purchasing and can help us with this, I'm sure.
Very good. Thank you. You mentioned grants, and I think we were referring to in your presentations grants received and tracking grants received. How much participation is there in grants given? Is there a tracking of grants given, or is that now depending upon the grant in a different department, such as the Office of Community Care?
Well, we track every dollar that goes out of this city. So, as you know, the last 2 years, Julie has helped with the committee on deciding the community grants. When Office of Community Services is setting up their procedures for some of these new programs that you've added, even with the rental assistance, we work with them, Julie primarily, on what do you need to collect for records? If we're giving them this money for this, what do we need to see back as support? To make sure that we're requiring what we need to. When Teresa Wellman set up the policies, she helped develop the policies for the rental assistance that we were talking about yesterday. She sent the forms to us to review to see if all the information we needed was on the form. Those kind of things. So we participate in that aspect and making sure we're getting the right financial information. And then, of course, we have all the tracking of the financial transactions run through finance as well.
Okay, good. You have a deputy director.
Not a deputy, an assistant finance director.
Okay, your org chart's a deputy director.
Well, I called it by the wrong name. It's, to me,
Okay.
it's more, it functions more like an assistant director. I view it as a deputy, and that hopefully Julie can, and I know she can, step in when she needs to replace me. But the title in the code is assistant finance director.
And Julie's shaking her head, no, she doesn't want to. So
She's like, no.
premium holidays. You expect to have one this year. Why wouldn't we just reduce what the employees pay instead of planning a holiday later this year?
Well, so when we go into the year, we anticipate that we do two things. We look at where we anticipate healthcare costs are going to climb to, and we thought this year we'd see a little bit of an increase, and so we left the premiums in place. We don't want to raise them and lower them, raise them and lower them, raise them and lower them. So they've been consistent for a while. And at the end of every audit process for 22, we look at 22, how much balance is in there, and can we somehow return that? And we do that by, during the payroll, we switch off the withholdings for the medical plans and the dental and the vision. We switch them off, so nothing is withheld from the employee's check. And the employer's piece also doesn't go into the fund. So we just stop it for that purpose. And I think we're getting closer to where we need to be, because as I started here, the first year there were several pay periods, and then it's gone down every year, and now we only have 2 pay periods. They did tell us, we anticipate a small increase in your healthcare costs. But we have enough, as you see, because we're giving 2, we're going to leave it where we left the premium. So I'm thinking next year we're probably going to be right where we need to be.
Okay. I recall back in I guess it was 2013, when we were doing interest-based bargaining, and the team insisted that we charge the employees a certain percentage. I opposed that because I used a different rubric and that I had used in the past. And then 5 years later, we were giving the employees those holidays to make up for overcharging them then. So I just don't want us to go down that route again.
I can attest to well, I won't call it excess, how the amount built up in the fund. I just know that when I came, there was plenty extra there.
Yeah, this was before you arrived.
And
but
see, we've also implemented some cost-cutting measures in our healthcare
I know.
administration, which has helped a lot. I know, I think we're way over, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll go over a little bit. I just have.
And I have one more question, and that has to do with our credit card use. And you indicated that there are several, depending upon the department. And your goal, I think you said, is to have one credit card that everybody, or one credit card company that everybody in the city would use.
So right now, if you're talking about our P cards that our departments use to buy things, each department has one or two cards assigned to it. And those cards are issued from Wells Fargo, our bank, our primary banking institution. And we had for a long time, if you look at the card, it has the department name on it, not a person's name on it. But the more successful P-card programs, you set up the card with a person's name on it from the department. It is a city card for a city program, and then you identify, these are the employees that go out and do the purchases on a regular basis. I'd like them to have a card, it has their name on it, so then when we see a transaction, we know who is responsible for buying that item. When you have just the department's name on it, and there's a lot of people that use the card, then you're not always sure who initiated this transaction. So that's a better control. That's the program I would like to work towards. And there are other contracts out there for P cards that we can piggyback on with other governments that provide better fee structure and better rebates, like because you're buying in bulk with other governments, you can get a rebate back. So I'm gonna evaluate that and see if we can look at other opportunities. We don't have to use Wells Fargo for that service. We are right now, and see if we can find an alternative for that. And issue cards with people's names on it. And then but the control structure has to be different. And we have to have an auditing process on, which we do now, but it's department cards. And that's on the plate of our AP staff that has to take everybody's logs that they do every month and look at the support, is it adequate? And that's a very time-intensive effort.
So really my last question, are we looking at banks that are in Maryland? You know, Wells Fargo has moved.
No, so not necessarily. I don't know. I would say that a lot of the banks are probably formed in states like Delaware that has all the corporate laws tax laws that are really favorable. So they form in different states, but I would want somebody who had locations here that we can use if we need to have a physical location here. But they could be incorporated in any number of states. Wells Fargo moved their lockbox operation. That's just a lot of people sitting in a center, big center, opening envelopes and processing them through a machine and doing that work. And they thought there aren't as many checks as there used to be, as you know. Not very many people are using checks. So it didn't make sense for them to keep a lockbox operation in Baltimore and in Philadelphia, so they consolidated them.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be quick. Thank you for your detailed answers. You can tell that you really had such exponential knowledge of the finance department. Slide 18, purchasing budget summary. What's going on there? Is there anything?
So what I would say is if you're looking at projected,
Yeah.
and budget. What we did this year was, as you know, the procurement officer position was vacant. And there were a lot of savings in salary. And because Brian was gone, there is a review of BG&E electricity usage and meters and that type of thing that Brian used to do in conjunction with Jim Pittman over in, he does some work for solid waste. He's a consultant. He's been doing extra work there to pick up since Brian left. And so we pay him as a consultant. So we moved some of the salary budget down to the contractual services to pay him through the consulting line.
I just want to make sure we knew what was going on.
Yeah, that's the difference there.
On MB,
And hopefully, once we have 3 people there again, they can take that back in-house.
he left, but I was going to ask on WBE and MBE, do you need legislation for that? We don't have, or is it a policy, Mr. Malinoff? Typically a city has a code section on it, and we don't, and that was on my list to do.
Not in the code section. I'm sure it references it in the purchasing policy, but some of the policy is incorporated by reference in the code.
But he has enough to ask for minority
Oh,
participation.
yes, we can find it. It's just a matter of really,
So
sometimes you have to look, and it's not apparent on the surface, and you have to get that information from everybody
That's not preventing you from doing it, okay. On the interfund, I guess a general statement is, when you look at on the non-allocated budget summary, I guess a general statement would be, when I look at page 62 or your slide on the non-allocated budget summary, a general statement would be is that those expenditures are not in any other part of the budget. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, it's one of those expenses that really doesn't belong in a particular department.
Okay.
But a lot of it's financial related. We have to do the transactions, we have to do the transfers and the contributions
So
and
if I was
stuff.
to look for contingency, this is where I would look. Okay,
that's
the
it.
only weird thing was interfund, when you say down below, you appropriated to the fleet replacement fund. The fleet replacement fund is shown elsewhere.
So this is the transfer leaving the general fund and going over to the fleet replacement fund so that Danny can buy vehicles
Okay.
for the general fund.
Okay,
The
so
enterprise funds also send money over to the fleet replacement
just-
fund if they want vehicles. So this is where we record that transfer.
And we trust that it's in that number then? It's in the,
Yeah, it is. So, do they have them delineated there? Yeah, the 3156. That 3 million is going over to Danny's fund.
okay.
Hopefully in July, as soon as we can book it.
Okay.
So he has that cash there.
Okay, and are there any, you asked about procurement, we're done with purchasing, we talked about grant administrator. Last year, there was a line item to it, one of your enhancements was to restore full funding to the audit committee, but then now I guess we transferred
Yeah.
money we
I
didn't have
Yeah.
to the
Yes.
city manager's office.
Yeah, well, it's now in the city manager's office. They're doing a lot of the work with the strategic planning.
Yeah.
And if you remember, that's one of the initiatives that the audit committee
So
has
did we
been-
actually physically put money in and we're
Yeah, I moved
transferring
it. I took it, I
over?
reduced it from mine and put it over in the city manager's budget.
Okay. All righty. Well, any last? All right, I think we're good. Sorry about. Oh, I'll do
Oh.
Kendall Charles. I
Forget about her.
I'm so quiet over here. Anyway, thank you so much, Director Dickinson and your team, great team. One announcement I want to make: on Tuesday, I had mentioned to the Department of Transportation that had an elderly resident who had complained about a $300 ticket that her grandson had gotten for parking.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
because this is a public forum, and I said it in a public forum, I want to come back with an update in a public forum. I went to her home on Tuesday evening to get more information, and apparently there was discussion about the ticket, but the ticket was never written. But I'll let Ms. Director Moore know about that. But as out of respect for this body, just to let everybody know that the ticket was not written according to grandmother. So, thank you.
Thank you for that follow-up. Yeah. For the kiddies?
Oh, no, okay, so
Yeah, no, it's
I'm
the-
tired, do not throw those at me.
I'm
Oh,
exhausted.
I have to do it again?
I'm exhausted. They're for Katie's kitties.
There you go.
All righty.
right. Yeah, you got
Okay,
Katie.
we have, what are we doing?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have the mayor's office coming in, or do we want to do legislation?
Let's just, I would just do the legislation
Until
until they
they come in? Okay. Okay.
And then we need to take.
She was doing bills. They had
After the
bills going out today,
legislation?
so She was doing invoices.
I don't think the
after
legislation
the ledge, so that management
just
can.
move to postpone it, maybe? Okay. Okay, the legislation, hold on, I gotta call it up here, is Resolution 24-23, support for the Penguin Swim Team practice and meets at Kenneth R. Dunn Municipal Swimming Pool.
Can I say something? Or do we have to put it on the table?
But I think we have to put it on the table, but I was going to take chair privilege and just say, I don't know why this is before us. We're supposed to review impact to the budget, and there's no information here that tells us what the impact to the budget is. Just a statement, but we're in discussion. So Alderwoman O'Neill?
The statement that I would like to make about it is there is a lot of talk going around in the community saying that the city does not want the swim team. And that is entirely not true. What the city is trying to do is work out a compromise so that the public pool is continued to be able to be used by the public for those 6 weeks in the evening hours and not have the swim team take up 100% of the pool by the number of people that are going into the pool. So I wanted just to put that on record, that it's not the city not wanting the swim team, it's wanting to come up with a compromise so that we can continue to serve our public and at large, as well as the swim team, and come up with a compromise on that.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I reiterated that at the city council meeting because it did sound like the optics were that we didn't support the swim team. Alderwoman Finlayson, do you have anything to discuss on this?
Well, my only comment, I think, would be my recommendation, which I have given to the sponsor of this resolution, is that he sit down with the director, who we have hired based upon her extensive credentials, and the city manager, and work out a compromise. And that means that everybody has a give and take and has an opportunity to hear the facts on both sides of this argument, because I don't think the facts have been made known to everyone. I agree with Alderwoman O'Neill. The objective is to satisfy the needs of the community. This is a community pool. And so whatever we should be doing should be with that in mind, the fact that how do we address the needs of our community as a whole? And I don't even want to get into the equity with other sports. And that could become part of the discussion. So anyway, I am hoping that the sponsor and the director and our city manager will have an opportunity to sit down and work this out so that this resolution isn't necessary.
So with
Thank you.
Both those comments on record, I'd accept a motion that we do no action on this. Is that the correct?
Madam
term?
Chair, it's not on the table for any action. We haven't taken a motion, so we don't have to do anything.
Yep.
No motion, so we don't have a motion to do nothing.
Well, you don't need a motion to do
So,
nothing.
okay,
You
we're
have
silent.
that.
Okay, all righty then.
So do we want to take a 5-minute recess to give the mayor's office an opportunity to come in and set up?
Yes, please.
Yeah. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. Is that enough time?
Yes.
10 minutes, good?
Is that, yeah, she's probably set up by now too. So let's take a 10-minute break. Okay. We're ready. So we invited you back in. We just had some questions on staffing and specific to your request, what have you. So why don't you present what you have, and then we'll ask the questions. And introduce who's at the table.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Kate Pettit, Chief of Staff to Mayor Buckley.
And I'm Mitchell Stevenson, Public Information Officer.
And thank you for having us back today to answer your questions. The slides we have today are really just taken from the presentation on Monday, so there's not much that is new, but these are the enhancements and budget differences on slide 1. I did do some highlighting through some of the slides on our outcomes. Part of what we don't want to over-anticipate your questions, but if you have questions about the PIO role, I just wanted to highlight all of the things the PIO is involved in delivering and has been part of, either directly overseeing and delivering or contributing to in terms of our outcomes. And then finally, we've just outlined some additional points around the reasons we are asking for this particular enhancement. So happy to speak to those points and answer your questions. And I have forwarded this version of the slides to Kaylin so that she can share them with you.
Okay. And when we speak of PIO, is the TV studio part of that budget?
The TV studio has its own budget that it's managed, but it is managed and overseen by the City PIO, yes.
So this is a rationale for asking for the enhancement, correct?
Yeah, this is related to this particular enhancement. I know this was the one that garnered the most questions on Monday. I don't want to get ahead of your questions. I'm happy to answer questions that you have on any of the Mayor's Office budget for 2024, but I know there were some particular questions on this one. I provided both other written answers earlier in the week, so I just wanted to sort of put in writing the reasons we're bringing this particular one forward. But as I say, happy to answer any of your questions about any part of our budget.
If I may, share license here, let me just set the framework for this discussion. You're asking for an enhancement, and what is not understood by some public and questions asked is on page 38 of the budget book. We'd like you to tell us who those people are and what do they do. And we know what we do. There's a line item alderman and alderwoman and the mayor and the chief of staff.
Yes.
But even going down to communications officer.
Yes.
Is that?
So some of these titles we're trying to look at realigning them better to the terminology that we all use.
Yeah, so that's the problem, yeah.
But this is kind of the terminology we've used in all of the budgets previously, I understand, certainly the budget last year. The communications officer refers to the public information officer.
Okay.
So that's the PIO position.
Mm-hmm.
The administrative assistant refers to our office administrator, who services both the Mayor's office and the City Manager's office as well. Mm-hmm. Her position sits within the Mayor's office, but she provides services across the teams. The community services specialist refers to the position in our team that provides liaison and representation for the African American community in particular, and delivers targeted programs of need to communities of need in line with the Mayor's priorities. So where we see a particular need that exists in a community and there is currently no immediate way to provide that need, and it's a high priority for the Mayor, such as public safety and crime prevention, the Mayor's office has developed and piloted programs as part of our liaison and engagement with those communities. So the No Harm program that I spoke to you about, which is a violence prevention program, is one of those. The Take Care program that was developed during COVID is another example of a program that was designed and led by officers within the Mayor's office to meet the needs in parts of our community. So that position, the Community Services Specialist position, is the liaison to the African American community. The Special Projects and Arts Coordinator refers to a position that provides liaison services to the arts community, to the business community, and on special projects such as the many infrastructure projects the city is working on. And that position is particularly involved in helping with community engagement and business engagement on those infrastructure projects, such as the bike and trail projects. For example, this afternoon, that officer is coordinating a meeting with stakeholders whose property connects onto the Wee, and we're looking at how we engage with those property owners.
Just, and the TBD undergrade is
The TBD is inaccurate. We've discovered a number of errors. We thought we had fixed these, but unfortunately some of these errors came through. So we're working with the finance team to get an updated and corrected version. So where the Community Services Specialist position says A10, that is TBD. That position is going to be reconsidered as part of the broad classification review that HR is coordinating. It is currently an A10 position, but we are asking to look at that because that position supervises a number of staff delivering programs
So
on
let
the
me ask, if
ground.
it's a reclassification, then is the title Community Services Specialist, that will be the title, or is it?
The title will remain the same. We may bring some alignment into this. You know, I'd like to see the liaison part of the role reflected in the title. I think that makes it easier for you and others reading the budget to understand exactly what distinguishes that position. The position is currently A10, but it does that classification doesn't reflect the supervisory nature of that role, which has grown. That position has actually brought in new grants, developed new programs, and now supervises a number of staff. So we're just asking to have a look at the workload and whether that aligns to the current grade and step, and whether that should be reconsidered in light of the additional services provided and the additional staff being managed.
May I ask
Yeah,
a question?
yeah.
So,
This is sort of an open discussion.
So we have two community service specialists?
No, you have one. There's one community services specialist. In the mayor's
I see
office.
for 23, it says we have two and then one for 24. Am I misreading that?
Yes, that is also an error, I'm afraid. We did have two. So one of those community service specialist role was the Hispanic liaison role. That role moved with, when the person who held that role moved over to run the Office of Community Services. And that Hispanic liaison function is still managed from the Office of Community Services. That's an alignment question we'd like to sort of look at for future budgets and how we kind of organise that structure in a coherent way. But there is a Hispanic liaison role. It sits on the city manager side at the moment, and we obviously work closely together. We are essentially operate as one team anyway.
Okay, thank you.
So what's the last paragraph in the budget book on that page says the One Annapolis staff consists of a senior advisor to the mayor, an African-American community outreach specialist, and a Hispanic outreach specialist. But that Hispanic outreach specialist is in the Office of Community Services. And the Office of Community Services, does that report to the mayor's office or the city manager?
The Office of Community Services reports directly to the city manager. However, the office works very closely with staff in the mayor's office. We meet with them every 2 weeks to plan our programs together, to escalate issues together, and to develop strategies together.
So you could say that the One Annapolis effort includes
Includes both, yes. It's
would
sort of
include-
all-encompassing.
Okay. All right, sorry to interrupt. So I think we were on Constituent Services Officer. Do you know who that is?
Yes, so the Constituent Services Officer provides frontline services to residents and acts as the city ombudsman to help resolve complex cases that have not been able to, be resolved in other ways. And the Community Engagement Administrator refers to the senior advisor role in the team, which provides engagement and liaison across a range of levels, including intergovernmental liaison and representation, and works closely with, across the community and brings issues and provides advice to the mayor on a very broad range.
Is that the equity position we added last year?
No, the assistant ombudsman position is a part-time position. And it's not currently reflected there because it was a one-time funded position last year.
Okay.
If the council agrees to fund that position as a contract position in 24, it will be reflected in the 2024 budget staffing chart.
Would it be appropriate for me to ask who that person is, Mr. Malinoff, the Community Engagement Administrator? I guess.
That refers to the position occupied by William Rao.
Okay. All righty.
So that's the assistant community engagement person is Mr. Rao?
The Community Engagement Administrator, the last position in the table.
So the Constituent Services, is that Ms. Raftovich?
Yes.
Okay, and then the new position is the Assistant
Ombudsman for Equity.
Ombudsman, okay.
Yes.
And I have a,
Is that, so how are you reflecting that in the budget?
It's not.
It's not on this chart, but it's in the.
It's an
in the budget.
enhancement that we are asking it was created as a one-off, sort of one-time funded position, and we're asking now for that position to be
Okay, so.
to be refinanced.
But on page 39, it says that the budget does include funding. Yeah, this is what I want. The stuff that you're asking for is already included in the budget, from what I understand. But just
In the mayor's budget.
in the mayor's budget, it says on page 39 of our budget book that the fiscal year 2024 budget highlights includes funding for an assistant ombudsman, includes funding for a part-time contractual position to assist the PIO, and then includes funding for the Butler statue, No Harm, and Annapolis United. I think that's sort of status quo, except.
These are the special projects or the special position, the additional positions we're asking for.
So that's your understanding, though, that these items are in the mayor's budget?
That's right, yes. I mean, these are enhancements. So, as I said, there's been some errors that have come through with this, and we're working with finance to correct and get you an updated version. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to get that completed for today, so I apologise.
That refers to the position table. The amounts in the prior year column reflect the prior year from last year, not the updated that we passed last year. So we need to get a new position table to you.
Oh, so the amended budget list, is that what you're saying?
We're going to display, we're going to put the page, give you a clean page, right?
So we have.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, ma'am. Katie Conley, Budget Manager. We have a staffing summary correction for you.
That's what you.
Basically, what happened was the FY23 and FY24 was carried over, but the actual changes were not reflected. So what you see in 24 is the same staffing that they had in 23. So no new positions in 24. The information that is shown on the screen is accurate as far as the additions to 24 as well. So there is an error in contractual services, I believe, and that will be corrected and given to you as well. So what is shown on the screen is accurate.
So that, may I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So that means the Butler statue, which is in our documents, 490,000, is not there?
That's incorrect, right? So the total is 190,000. The Butler statue for 10,000 as shown on this screen is accurate.
Right. That was found out
Okay.
Monday.
So
Yeah.
the total is 190,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And the Butler statue is only 10,000.
That's correct.
Yeah, we gotta flip it. So you're gonna reissue pages, both pages?
Yes, we're going to have those all completed to you, or completed today and then provided Monday.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
We requested on Monday a copy of the total employee listing, and under the mayor's office on that listing are 4 additional positions. The assistant ombudsman, which I understand was a one-time that we're asking. Another person under no harm, a person under the leads management position, and a person under the Town anecdote coordinator. Where do these fall? Should not they be listed as positions under the mayor's staffing?
They are contractual positions, they are our part-time positions, and they are currently employed. So they're simply, and they are largely grant funded. So they will be continued to be. So the Naptown anti-dope position, for example, will be funded through OEM if the grant is received from the county.
Okay.
Does
In
that-
other departments, contract positions are listed under their staffing summary. So that's why I'm asking. Why
Yes,
they're not.
I'll work with.
So
So it's 6 interns, is that what I'm saying?
the part-time positions aren't always there, correct? The part-time positions will put a sentence that there's part-time positions in the department that aren't reflected there. And as far as the mayor's office, I'm not sure about the particulars on where, if we have that sentence in this presentation about being additional part-time positions in the office.
So this is the new person that's been hired already.
All right.
And so the
We don't know
funding
anything
listed
about
for no harm, that 80,000, is that part contracted wages, or is that specific to something else?
So the no harm $80,000. So no harm, in last year's budget, the council approved an amendment funding $80,000 to the mayor's office for violence prevention initiatives. And for the first 6 months, we were working with the county to develop the Cure Violence workshop and assessment and resolve with the county whether there would be an ongoing effort funded by the county to implement a violence interruption program in Annapolis. The assessment found that there was no community organisation with significant capacity to deliver that work on the ground. The costs of setting that up were significant, and the county was not in a position to fund that at the end of the year. So the mayor's office then re-established a program that it had piloted 2 years ago, and in fact, it was the piloting of this program that got the interest of the county and spurred them to work with us. It's the No Harm Violence Prevention Program. So from January to the end of June, we have 2 part-time community engagement specialists employed. So the $80,000 funding for this year covers their positions and their program of work. They're delivering a series of workshops, information and engagement sessions, and connecting residents to a range of services in the Robin Wood community. I've actually been able to have the No Harm team added to the work session agenda for the 27th so that we can present to you about the program in detail, what they're doing, what the goals are, what our outcomes and measurables will be, and how we'll assess that in May and June. But we are seeking we are seeking funding of another $80,000 to continue the work throughout FY24. The goal is to seed capacity and ultimately keep us going while we wait for the county to resolve their position. We believe there is funding coming from the county for the work, but we want to keep going.
Okay. And so then one of those 4 positions that are not listed, that you said were all contractors, is the leads manager position?
The lead program has been discontinued.
Yeah.
We ended that program at the end of December. We're not seeking to have it renewed. that was grant funding. It's federal money administered through the state, but that funding pool is going to be greatly reduced. And over the 6 months that we were working with APD last year and with other stakeholders, it became clear that LEAD was not a good, it wasn't a neat fit in Annapolis. Our policing model is very much focused on community engagement. Our police are already actively invested in diversion and re-entry programs. And we couldn't see a neat way to get that program working here. And with other ideas on the table, including Annapolis United and other programs, and knowing that that funding was going to be greatly reduced, we made the decision to just, we would discontinue LEAD and we would look at trying to work with APD through other means to achieve those diversion and re-entry goals.
Okay, thank you.
It was Richard. Okay, this is what seems to be misunderstood. The mayor's office is a hub of efforts. It's the mayor's right to set, the policy, the initiatives, and we applaud that. So there are these initiatives. One Annapolis is one of the biggest ones. So unlike other departments, from a financial perspective, we don't know how to measure those efforts. We don't have performance measures for those efforts. We're a little bit unclear on an itemized list of all those efforts. And again, I'm not criticizing the efforts at all. It's totally understood. This is the mayor's office, but it's hard to defend these positions if we're not able to measure their performance or their output against the mayor's policy initiatives. So
I will just, Alderwoman O'Neill, you had read out 4 positions, and that there wasn't quite right. The lead position, lead has been terminated. The Naptown anti-dope movement position is funded through the opioid intervention program and the grant administered by OEM. It's actually not funded by the mayor's office. We run it out of the mayor's office, but it's actually, all its deliverables fit under the opioid intervention task force of OEM. And Director Simmons was presenting on that the other day, and I do have that information in front of me. But their measurables and deliverables roll up into the program. So that includes targets for overdoses, so less than 25 overdoses per month, the number of fatal and non-fatal overdoses each year, the number of substance abuse prevention, enforcement and treatment programs initiated and delivered, and the opportunities made available to improve the lives of those with substance use disorder. So the NAM deliverables tie in with there. Now, having said that, I can give you some specifics for the Naptown Antidote program. That program works to will have delivered 6 out of 6 targeted substance abuse disorder awareness education workshops this year. It will have delivered 3 community engagement listening sessions. It will have delivered 2 community health fairs, and it will have delivered between 2 and 4 weekly visits to high-risk communities to offer overdose prevention education. Those communities are in Parole, the Newtown Wilbourn Estates, Bywaters, Bay Ridge Gardens, Eastport, Robinwood. And with all of those efforts, we partner very closely with the other parts of our city departments who are delivering this work and coordinating this work. So we work very closely with the fire department and with OEM and with the police department. We also work very closely with community partners such as Serenity Sisters, the Community Action Agency, Unio Health, Chase Brexton Healthcare, the Maryland Department of Labour, Annapolis Family Support Centre. These are just some of the people who've participated in our fairs and engagement programs. So it's a very solid partnership with numerous agencies, and I know that some of you, members of the council, have been participating in those fairs and engagement sessions as well when they occur in your ward. NAM has distributed over 300 doses of Narcan and over 2,000 fentanyl test strips in the past year. So that is the way NAM is contributing to the opioid intervention work that the city is doing. As I mentioned the other day, the model in the Mayor's office is very much local, community-based, relationship-driven, and that is the difference between NAM and the other substance use disorder programs. It's really built on a trusted messenger who's in the communities on a regular basis, who is well known and who is trusted as a service provider.
So when you were asked by the finance department to put everything together for the budget, you didn't have time to list these. When you were asked by, I saw the letter going out from the finance department asking the departments for, the rubric, if you will. So you didn't have the time to list these so that they didn't get in the budget book? It seems like,
the NAM project is managed, reporting is done through OEM, and so I coordinate with OEM and we coordinate with them on that reporting.
Okay.
So that's how NAM is done. No Harm is the other one that we do, and that's the only other one. There's only the two programs. And No Harm is a new program. It's been up and running for about 2 months, and we'd like to present to the council on the program. We've been looking for time to come and present to you on that. As I said, we've been able to get onto the work session agenda for the 27th.
In fairness to you, I believe all the departments were given performance measures from before, but I don't think you were ever given performance measures. Is that a correct statement?
The mayor's office did not develop performance measures from the 2 years or so we've been talking about them. They've never had those listed performance measures.
And that's what
it's not an operational
it has
department.
become that, though. It's right.
So that's not going to be my decision. That'll be the decision of the next level.
So the question becomes, how do we measure the success of any of our programs if we don't have some sort of a metric in order to determine the success? I know we can have a variety of activities, but how do we measure whether those activities are hitting the mark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said, the Naptown anti-dope movement, their measurables and deliverables are reported under OEM. I can speak to all of the detail of that, but that's where it's reported. And Director Simmons included that in his presentation the other day. And the substance use targets and measurables and performance measures that he reports on are what we're included in that. The NAM program is included there.
So I am looking now at the report that came on Ward 4 on March 15th or thereabout, not March 8th, recently, I'll just say, because I just lost the date. So is this what you're referring to? We each get a report from the Office of Emergency Preparedness on the substance use disorder impact.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that this really reveals all of the impact, but we can see how many overdoses we've had, how many are fatal. But this is what you're referring to that we get from them on a monthly basis. So we each can.
Yes. And yes, and so there are targets for the year on how many fatal overdoses. We will have hit a target based on our goals of prevention, and there are other targets listed. They were included in Director Simmons' report the other day, and we are part of meeting that goal, and we do it through those engagement programs and through Narcan distribution of fentanyl test strips. So we are part of that whole effort. And as I say, the thing that distinguishes NAM for the Mayor's office that's different to what Fire and APD and OEM delivering is it's very much relationship and locale based. That is what we believe the Mayor's office can bring that's a little different to the other parts of that program, that we can build that trusted messenger relationship in the communities. And that we are delivering meeting all of the targets that we set for NAM this year in terms of the workshops, listening sessions, engagement, the number of interactions with the public, with youth, with Narcan distribution and so on. And then that all feeds up into those deliverables that OEM, the Opioid Intervention Task Force, report on that monthly basis, yes.
Okay, thank you. May I go on, Madam Chair? I'm looking at the full staffing listing, and I see 6 interns out of the mayor and city council, so clearly it's the mayor. Where are they? To whom do they answer? And how are their salaries determined? And I'll tell you part of my reason, other than wanting to know who they are. I do a summer jobs program, and I was told that if you get a job in the mayor's office, you make twice as much money as you make in any of our other departments. And it's true. That's what I've been told. So can you speak to who these 6 interns are and how their salaries are determined? And how that differs from other departments who have interns and summer staff.
I will refer to finance for clarification, but I think I can answer the question because our interns were part of the citywide intern program. So
yeah, I'll first of all, the list that we gave you is all the positions, but if those are the interns, and they would know the names better than I do, that serve, they're no longer here. They're in our Munis system as employees, but depending on how the data was drawn, it might include people that are no longer working.
Okay, so these 6 interns do not exist in our system anymore?
No.
Okay, so the question still for me is, if we do this again, how do we pay them? On what scale? Because I'm hearing from department heads that that's not a city scale that's being used.
Madam Chair, Michael Malinoff, City Manager. In this budget year, we anticipated the internship program, but it's going to be managed through HR with the assistance of Mr. Rowell, and we're going to keep the wages mindful to the level that the governor just signed off on the minimum wage, perhaps a little more. We certainly heard from some of our directors and others, including our HR director, that some of the interns were getting paid more than some of our employees, and we did not want that to happen. Mm-hmm. So it'll be run through HR and Mr. Rowell, and hopefully those issues will not come up.
Thank you for that, because I was hearing the exact same thing, and not just the interns, summer interns that we hire, but some of our permanent employees. So it's hard to kind of justify that. I'm looking at the list again, and I see a Hispanic Outreach Navigator. So do we actually have 3 people in the Office of Community Services in addition to Ms. Gutierrez and Ms. Lee?
There are currently 2, there are 3 positions, as I understand, and the city manager might be better speaking to this because the office sits there, but there are 3 positions, and OCS did also use some interns this year, and they have grant-funded positions to help with Hispanic outreach, as I understand.
Right, there are the 3 positions, 2 are full-time, and 1 is grant-funded.
So the Hispanic, is that the Outreach Navigator? Is
Correct.
The part-time position, I assume?
Correct.
Okay. And the interns that she's had are not listed. Is that because they're grant funded or?
I think those, sorry, Madam Chair, my apology, sorry, Alderwoman. I believe the 6 interns you referenced included interns used by OCS. The Mayor's Office had, during the summer program, intern program, the Mayor's Office had about 3 interns working with us for about 5 weeks. And then there was funding left over, and Ms. Gutierrez continued to employ 2 interns in her program.
I do know, go ahead, Mr. Malinow.
For being able to give you complete information, we're presenting on Wednesday, and I'll get you that information for you so that you will have it. I believe one of the interns, according to Ms. Dickinson, may be continuing right now with the Community Services Office, but I'll be able to get you that.
Okay. I am very much interested. I know how valuable they have become to that office. And so...
We're trying to find the funding to carry that position through the end of the year, and also hire the open position that's there, that was vacated by, I'm not going to remember her, Erica. They're trying to fill that position as well. So, but they want, this person is helping out a lot with the rental assistance program, and they really need to keep all the bodies there if they can. So.
I couldn't agree more, and I will come up with a recommendation that I hope I can get my colleagues to support to help beef up that department.
And if I could just clarify, just to be very clear, that the 6 interns you referenced as part of the Mayor's Office were not all in the Mayor's Office. That includes those interns in OCS.
Okay, so they're listed, one of them's listed twice then, because there is one that's listed as the navigator, and then I guess the other one.
I believe the navigator belongs to the is one of the OCS positions, yeah.
Okay. My last question has to do with the TV, TV studio and Mark and Julian. We all know what they do and to what extent they serve us and the city. Where's their budget? And where's their, did they make a request for enhancements? Was it included? Did it?
I think we just have a line item.
In the budget book, the PEG studio and their funds are included under contractual services.
In the mayor's office?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just one
Page
number.
39.
So they're not included as staff because they're contract?
That's right.
Even though we have a column for contracts in our staffing summary?
They are a vendor, not a contractual employee.
Okay. So were there enhancements included? Are we talking, what, $250,000?
Yes, we added, was it 22? Yeah.
That's your budget,
I think we
Or
have a
is that
total
their
of
total budget?
216,000 for them.
216,000.
I'm looking at the 216, but I'm also looking at the 30,000. Is that,
That's
that's Ms. Stevenson's?
Is that for CNI?
Yeah, there is $30,000 included as an enhancement for Make Your Mark to use for the PIO and the studio to use to support the CNI project, and that is a figure we will allocate over 2 years. We anticipate $15,000 to $20,000 in FY24 and another $10,000 to $15,000 in FY25 to see through the life of the planning for CNI.
So have all of these items been included in the mayor's budget?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Neill, are you still looking? No, I just want to make sure. I think what's hard to quantify is that a lot of your roles, it's facilitation. You know, you facilitate
if, if I wanted to find out the status of the CNI, I don't know, would I go to your staff for that, or is that?
You certainly could, but the work that we're doing in the city to support CNI is across team work, it's across departments.
Right.
So we have our PIO dedicated to support communication and community engagement. We have our community engagement specialist working to facilitate community outreach and bring stakeholders together. They work directly with our hacker partners and with planning and zoning staff as well, who are actively engaged on supporting the CNI effort.
Mm-hmm. So it's more of an interface facilitator role. It isn't like, is it in this responsibility or that responsibility, and then it isn't anywhere. It's more of an interface. And
I think I should just be clear from the Mayor's office, we deliver, through the PIO, we deliver almost all of the communication for the CNI project. That includes their website, their newsletter, the live streaming. So we provide the bulk of those services, yes.
I thought it had a hacker letterhead, it doesn't?
It's a...
Okay. Yeah. Glad we went public with that one.
So can I just double check? So when it says FY24 special projects breakdown on page 39, and I know that our numbers were wrong, but those are there. Where is that number in the Office of the Mayor's budget? Under what headline? Is it contractual services? Is it?
Which one again, Karma? I missed the first part.
This $190.
The special project.
FY24 special project.
So special projects is under the supplies and other roll-up. So if you actually go in OpenGov and expand that section, you'll see that account that says special projects.
Okay. And the $80 for no harm is to cover the two, is a grant funded to cover the two part-time people?
Go ahead, Kate, sorry.
It's not a grant. It was a council one-time funding allocation for FY23, and we're requesting that the council fund that again in FY24.
And that $80,000 covers what?
It covers the staff who deliver the program and all of the program engagement activities. As I mentioned, it's a new program. It was piloted a couple of years ago, and but that led to work with the county, which I referenced earlier. Given the county's position at the moment, we have restarted that program. It's only been going for a couple of months. That's why you don't have a lot of information that we want to come and present to you at the work session, and that will give you the full kind of picture of no harm and what we're doing on the ground based in Robinwood in order to build capacity for violence prevention and disruption model in that community.
Okay, and that's one staff or two staff?
It's two staff working as community engagement specialists on the ground in Robinwood, both in normal hours and outside of hours.
Okay, and their contracts, so which is why they're not on the staffing summary?
Yes. Yes.
Even though we have a column for contract employees?
I would defer to my finance colleagues for how that is accounted in the budget.
I'm sorry. I was working on something else. Looking at an email.
So I was just double checking that the $80,000 that's inside the supplies and other for special projects covers the salary, I'll say.
It's all the funding for the no harm program.
For two employees. But it's not listed as a position under staffing summary because they're contract employees, even though we have a column for contract.
So I think Katie and I are gonna meet on that and see which ones we need in there and which ones we don't need in there, trying to be consistent. APD is one that's kind of like this, where they have a lot of part-time contractual people, and we're gonna try to make it consistent, that we're treating them consistently.
Okay. We're just trying to...
I understand. It's a lot of different pieces, and it's hard to kind of pull it together and understand the whole function.
Right, so different departments list positions differently,
Yeah.
and so it's,
And this is one, again, that has part-time contractual, full-time contractual. Some of the grant-funded hires can, if they're receiving a paycheck, they will be in the system. And so we got to find a way to show them to you, other than a one sentence. You know, in Rec and Parks, we include a sentence there that says they have several part-time temporary people. We're not putting those on the charts.
okay. Because right now, for the list of employees and their titles, there's only one listed under no harm. There's not two employees. So were there two employees in 2023, or are we adding an employee for 2000?
There are currently two employees, yes.
Okay. So is this list that we were given on Monday maybe not up to date?
I was under the impression that it is, that it was. So I will reach back to and connect with who provided it to me and see where the disconnect is.
Okay.
It's FYI only though, right? It's just sort of a roster.
So, yeah, so my request was a current listing.
Okay.
And that's, so, well, I'll connect and get back to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Well, may I follow up? That means that the people who are not here are not continuing to get paychecks. I assume you're pulling this from who gets paychecks.
I did not,
I mean, but whomever does this, isn't that how it's generated?
Not necessarily. It's from the Munis system at a point in time. So whether or not it's got people that were recently working that are no longer getting paid, I don't know. And was that HR that pulled the list for us? We'll have to see what the parameters were in the search and what it was dated.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Echo.
Yeah,
echo.
no, I think it's sort of that, it's like, you know, HP and TI and Apple and IBM, they're Apple, and the rest of the budget is IBM. Is that a fair assumption?
Thank you for saying we're Apple.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you're like liberal arts and the rest is engineering. So I think one, I've been talking to my colleagues about this, but I think not for this year, it'll probably be too late, but next year, I think what you need to do is tie this into an org chart, similar to how the mayor presents his agenda and priorities, you know, city dock and mobility, and then people that do, you know, it's a tough one. I commend you for managing all of it, and thank you for your patience in us trying to put it all together, so.
No, I understand. There's a lot of kind of anomalies in this, and, you know, and how we work across the departments and where programs are funded or where they're managed and so on. So thank you for your patience and interest as we
Thank
get
you for
to
your efforts.
clarify the details.
We're slow, but we catch on eventually.
All righty, thank you so much. I guess.
Thank you.
What were we gonna do, adjourn?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
wait a minute, you didn't get a
Uh-oh.
football. You get a pretty one, Mitchell.
Oh, I have.
Yeah, I can't do anything right now. Thank you. Yeah, they're back by popular demand, and we needed to add some levity.
You better get one to Kevin, because he was really ready.
Eric is giving him one in her office mail.
Nice.
Whatever.
Thank you. Are we adjourned?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Wow, ladies, 1:15 on the dot.
Yeah.